Hi, welcome to the AppsEvents channel. Welcome to the Summer Summit. I'm James and I'm your host for this afternoon or evening, depending where you're watching this right now. We have an amazing lineup of speakers for you in a few moments. We'll be welcoming Suan Yeo from Google, Head of Education, ANZ, Australia, New Zealand. Then we have Sethi de Clerq from the Flip Classroom Tutorials YouTube channel. He'll talk a little bit about that. And we're lucky to have Tanya, LeClair, Georgina Dean, Ivy Lee, Ken Morrison. We'll have Kristen, Struble, Tim Evans, and Melanie Cherry this afternoon. So I'm very, very much looking forward to this. Before we get started, I want to say a big thank you to Acer for Education for sponsoring this event. Acer, as I'm sure you're aware, I believe is the biggest supplier of Chromebooks to schools, Chromebooks in education. I have some amazing devices. I personally have used the Spin 11 device, which is almost indestructible. In fact, I will say indestructible. I was at the Acer offices in Taiwan and we tested it. You pour water on it, can drop it on the floor. Amazing devices. So thank you, Acer, for sponsoring this event. I would like to say, as part of that, if you would like to join our giveaway, we have a couple of free tickets for boot camps and summits for later on this year. Now, obviously, we're doing a lot of online training, so it could be a free ticket for an online training, or we hope to get back to face-to-face training and summits later on this year. Please go to the link, gsummit.link/Acer to enter to win that. And I'll put this link up again a little bit later. Okay, if you're watching this live or if you're watching on YouTube, please do tweet out, #GooglePD, tag us at AppsEvents. Please tag that you're watching this live. It would be great to see you on Twitter. And don't forget to connect with everybody there. So I'm just going to move on. And in a moment, we'll be talking to Sethi and Tim as well. But firstly, I want to welcome Suan Yeo. We're very lucky to have him here. I actually met Suan at probably my second Google event back in 2013. So let me just bring Suan in here. Hi, Suan.
Hey, James.
Very much welcome. I just want to repeat the story to you. I remember we met in 2013 in Vietnam, in Hanoi, and it was my first ever session at a Google event. I remember you came in and said, "Oh, I really want to see the session." I was, well, that's great. Very exciting for me. And the second you said that, the internet dropped out. I don't know if you remember that, but the internet just dropped out. So if Suan ever says that to you, you know you're cursed. How's everything going with you, Suan?
Good, James. Yeah, I'm here in Sydney, Australia, 7 p.m. So, I'm grateful to be able to join the group here, and all the viewers that you have all around the world. So, really excited to be here. Maybe to share some of the things that I've gone through, here in Australia, but also, working with educators in the region.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Suan. Let me just bring your screen in now. Here we go.
All right.
Okay, are you all set? I will drop myself out.
Thanks, James. Before we begin today, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the challenges that many of our colleagues and friends, family are going through at the moment, and that I stand with them in support of racial equality. So as James mentioned, I'm head of education for Australia and New Zealand. Those are my handles and email. I'd love to connect with you if you have any questions. I did want to share this is my claim to fame. If you've done the Google Arts and Culture selfie, it actually does a lookup with the photo that you have on all of the millions of artwork that they have on the Google Arts and Culture site. So go ahead and try that out with Google Arts and Culture on the mobile app on your Android or iPhone. I want to first start off with, sort of talking about my life in the last couple of months. I know many of us around the world have gone through interesting times, but, some of the pluses and minuses, that have happened in my own household, as you can see, whether it's parent-teacher interviews on video conference or playing games or music lessons, a lot of this stuff, PE with Joe, you can see my kids down there in the bottom left, getting haircuts, a thing of the past, and obviously having virtual TGIFs. A lot of these things have moved online. What you see behind me on this wall is actually blown up here. When we first went into work from home for Google, I started this sticker wall. I called it my quarantine sticker wall, and I thought, I'll do a sticker a day for every day that we're working from home, almost like a prisoner doing the scratchings on the grill. And lo and behold, you see on the bottom right there the number 125 days, and we are still working from home. In fact, our CEO Sundar just announced that we'll be, voluntary work from home till July of 2021. So another year to go. What I wanted to sort of share, what we've seen, obviously COVID-19 has affected a lot of people, but I think it's actually changed the education landscape forever, and for the better in many cases. You might have seen, covers on Newsweek, Time Magazine, talking about sort of this generation, that's going to grow up, right? Many of us have kids. I have got 2 primary school kids in my household, and they're going through this period where 2020 is going to be sort of an asterisk, right, in the history books. And this generation pandemic, they're growing up, what is that new normal going to look like for them? I love this UNESCO sort of graphic that shows, at its peak, almost 1.6 billion learners from almost 200 countries were disrupted by COVID. And you see this graphic that shows the school closures, at a national level, over time, right, over the last couple of months. It's really, a global impact at scale, which is what we're seeing. So what is there more of, and what is there less of, right? A lot of these in-person things that we used to do, in-person things like professional development conferences and summits used to be done in person, and now we're moving to this new form of virtual communication and connection. I also love the phrase, you might have heard, it's not social distancing, it's actually just physical distancing, right? We're still using the online mediums to connect socially. So it's really wonderful to see all of the opportunities that I think that have come out from this global pandemic. You see this over globally, right? In all forms and all medias. If you look at all the top downloaded apps over the last couple of months, many of them are in that video conferencing and social media. So the need for people to connect is higher than ever, and we're really excited. I think just to see if you're in the technology space and you're passionate about technology, it's really wonderful to see this happening. I'll shift gears a little bit, talk about Google. Why we've started to look at the opportunity here. Is really the opportunity to expand where and how students learn, so that everyone has access to that quality education. And I think one thing that COVID's really created is this ability to look at that equity question, and how do we bridge that equity gap that does exist, right? If we're going to move into remote learning, does every student have access to a device, to the internet, to be able to access their homework when they're not in their classrooms? We've seen sort of the growth, in the numbers of our platforms, which is really exciting for us, but also gives us, tremendous hope for the fact that, we're going to see increased exponential growth, in the use of technology in classrooms. I did want to share, a resource that we put together, teachfromhome.google, which is this hub of information and tools to help teachers during this coronavirus crisis. So they come in multiple languages. So check it out. It's also a great resource for parents. One group that's definitely come to the forefront during this remote learning period are parents, and the roles that they have to play as well, right, in supporting their child during remote learning. And so, over the last couple of months, we've spent hundreds and thousands of hours in schools listening to what are some of the specific things that teachers need, that students need, to really help increase the engagement there. And what we found that, teachers are still struggling to manage, workflows and to collaborate centrally. And so when you remember, those of you who've been with us for a while, Google Classroom was created as a result of that direct feedback, right? The ability to track student progress centrally and to enable sort of that fast back and forth feedback. And over time, over the last couple of months, I'm excited to say, we've launched a whole bunch of updates, products, features, programs, and training to support this. I need to get rid of this bar here. Okay, apologies. When you look at something like Google Meet, we are really ramping up sort of the development and R&D there, and you see, over the last couple of months, again, a lot of the improvements have come by, and I think it's exciting. Whether you're using Google, whether you're using Microsoft, whether you're using Zoom, whether you're using Apple. I think the fact that this global pandemic has created this opportunity for us to create better, faster, cheaper devices, platforms, for all of our users. So really exciting times. A good example is the grid setup, that we now see obviously in Meet, but obviously Zoom were the first ones to come up with it, and it's sort of the direct feedback that we got. Teachers want to be able to see their students when connecting with them online, and so we've rolled this out. I know Microsoft has rolled this out with Teams, so we sort of see the industry pushing one another over time. I did want to share, this example though, that we will always have super users out there that will push the limits on what we see that's possible, and through the extension and the open ecosystem that exists within our G Suite for Education platform. So this is James Campbell High School in Hawaii. They did the Google Meet with all of their faculty, all 225 of them on one Hangout. Or one Meet, rather, sorry, as it was renamed during this pandemic. And you can see, all of them on one screen, and they even shared the screen with the slides as well. So fantastic just to see, the global connection, that's been created, and people responding to that opportunity there. I did want to share one resource, wideopenschool.org, which is a collaboration, with all of these organizations that you see at the bottom of the screen there. All of the resources, and I'll go a couple of screen grabs here, whether you're a teacher or parent, some of the examples that are taken from many of these technology vendors and content providers, ready to give you real life examples of how we can use it. And I do want to share, sort of, we're going to see over the next couple of months, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, back to school period, with many more updates coming for Drive, Classroom, especially, and Meet. And so stay tuned for that. I want to share, the last thing I'll share here is, sort of what's new. How do you keep track of everything that's new with G Suite? And this is the link that you see at the top there, gsuite.google.com, what's new. It's a good place to keep track of the product calendar and what's coming as well. One last graphic. I love following Silver Duckworth. If you do follow her, her Twitter handle's at the bottom right there of the image. And she does these amazing sketch graphs, sketch notes, and success is an iceberg. I like this one a lot. She does, again, many wonderful ones, but this one I think is sort of that what the times that we live in right now, right, where at the top of at the surface, on top of the water, what people see is a beautiful iceberg, but at the bottom there's so much hard work that goes into getting all of this stuff done. And so to all the teachers and educators out there, thank you for everything that you do. I'll leave you with one final quote. Whoever said one person can't change the world never ate an uncooked bat. Jokes aside, we live in very interesting times. So to all the educators out there, I know how hard you guys have been working. So thank you for all of your hard work. Hopefully the rest of the sessions today, you're going to hear from some great presenters. As James mentioned, they're on the list. So please take the time to stop and share some of these with your fellow educators that couldn't make it today, and maybe we'll see them at a future session. Alrighty. And with that, I think I just wanted to end quick so that we can get to the crux of the content and really have good conversations with Sethi and Tim.
Thank you, Suan. Thank you very, very much. So I'm just going to bring in Tim and Sethi so we can have a bit of a chat about schools in the region. Okay. So let's just do a quick around the room, just in case you don't know. I'm going to go down to Sethi, who's in the bottom right. Sethi, please, quick introductions.
Unmute. Okay, everyone, you should hear me now. My name is Sethi. I have a YouTube channel where I produce a lot of videos, and I really enjoy sharing content, and I can't wait to learn from everyone in this stream. And I just want to say the chat is on fire, so everyone, thank you for joining us. Keep sharing it out, because the more people, the better.
And we'll talk about that little silver plaque in a few minutes, Sethi. Thank you. Tim, introduce yourself in case nobody knows you.
Hi everyone, Tim Evans, based in Hong Kong, where I'm an EdTech coordinator at an international school. Great to be involved with AppsEvents again, and looking forward to seeing what everybody's been doing over the last few months and learning from you all.
Fantastic. And I think what we'll do with this sort of informal chat, I'm going to start with Suan. Maybe ask Suan, what have you noticed schools been asking or teachers been asking for the most from Google in your region?
For a vaccine, maybe. I think a lot of schools here in Australia are, going through an interesting time where they are discovering, what that new normal is going to look like. Whether it's a hybrid classroom where you have, a couple of days doing remote learning, a couple of days in the classroom, and how to support students, with different needs inside and outside of the classroom. Here in I'm based in Sydney, but in Melbourne, we're just going through our second lockdown there, and schools are shut again, and so teachers that were preparing to go back into the classroom after the holidays now had to quickly pivot to supporting remote learning as well. So I think it's what they've asked from Google is what are the tools that they can utilize to better support their learners that come from very diverse backgrounds, and how best to bring everyone together in this time of need.
And just tagging onto that, Suan, have you found your role within Google has changed in the last few months because of these extra demands from schools and teachers?
I definitely would say I have a much greater appreciation for teachers. Having two primary school kids at home, now as well, it's given me the opportunity to see their learning firsthand, right? In terms of how they engage with their teachers, how they learn. Some of the things that they normally would do in the physical classroom. It's magical when your 7-year-old shares a Google document with you and asks for feedback. I think that's one of the proud moments as a Google parent. But beyond that, I think it's given me more patience, I think, and appreciation for the work that our lovely, wonderful educators do.
Well, let's move on to Sethi and then Tim in a moment. So, I mean, Sethi and Tim are both on holiday, unlike the Australian schools who are in session right now. Sethi, and probably can tell, Tim has been on a nice long holiday now. Sethi, what are you thinking about as you go back to school now? I know you obviously have a class to teach and you're training your teachers. What's on your mind as you prepare for opening in the next couple of weeks?
Well, for me, it's making sure that no matter what ends up happening, that we're prepared for that. So obviously, have everything planned out for in-person sessions, but do have that element that allows you to instantly flip. Let's say that something was to go wrong or something happens and we have to revert back to online learning 100%, then we can do that. And one of the goals that I've sort of set myself is to really reduce the clicks. And I keep saying that, just reduce the clicks. Reduce the clicks for the teachers, reduce clicks for students, because obviously now that we've had this sort of almost an experiment of being online and seeing what works and what doesn't, I think as we reduce those clicks, we'll be able to keep all those things that work really well. And then once we go back to everyday teaching in the classroom, and we can still have those proven lessons and all those added skills that teachers now possess, and just make our lessons even better. So that's something I'm really excited about.
And Tim, yeah, similar question to you, Tim. What are you thinking about as school is opening? Because I know your role is a little bit different, Tim. What is your role within your school again?
Yeah, so as EdTech coordinator, I support the teachers and the students basically with tech use and tech integration. We have a model where we look to support I look to support, and the team look to support teachers more than students, in the sense that if we can upskill a teacher with a tool, that it will filter down and it's more sustainable then as years go on then. For us, it's a bit of a strange one because we were shut for 4 months. We went back in for a month. Then there was a second wave and we're starting again now online. So we're going back, which has been quite nice because it's given us a break to assess what worked and what didn't work. So I know we're going to hit the ground running now in a couple of weeks' time, where we've had that experience. There should be no teething issues and everything. You mentioned about holiday. That's what we've been doing, basically setting up devices and everything, because all our devices are in school on campus. Students don't have them, so we're having to arrange that they're ready accounts, or the rollover from 1 year to 1 grade. So yeah, we're just thinking of what worked. And obviously, you look at what didn't work as well. I mean, that's you do that naturally then, and then plan accordingly then.
And back to, I mean, just curious about your devices. So you're going to be having students coming into school to collect those. How are you organizing that?
Mix is a mixture. We're doing part deliveries to certain locations around the cities that are on the bus routes, and then because of restrictions, then there's only a certain amount of people who can congregate in one area. We're doing. That's been recommended to parents, go to one of these pickup areas, and then others who can't then will manage to they can come into school on a set time then.
Well, I mean, my perspective on it, outside of education, as we all are here, many teachers are also parents, and I have two teenagers at home, and I can't wait for school to open, whether online or in school. Give them something to do. It's a big challenge having kids at home. So I'm just pivot to that, Suan, because obviously you're a parent of children. What have you found? Just, I mean, if there was any advice for parents, what have you found that's been working for you with kids at home studying?
You know, both my kids go to a Montessori school, and you know, one thing, they don't use a whole lot of technology in the Montessori curriculum, and you know, I think during this time, it's actually given them the opportunity, the school, the opportunity to revisit, you know, the role that technology plays in a Montessori curriculum. I think for my kids, you know, it's been easy because we've always had technology in the house, and for them to use it in the right way and a meaningful way, I think it's been critical. You know, it's funny, we always make the joke, you know, I have a 11-year-old who's in year 6, and you know, every time Ryan's on his Chromebook, I know he's doing schoolwork, and every time he's on his iPad, he's playing his games, you know, so we can tell really quickly sort of the different ways that they're engaging with technology. And I think it's important, you know, I think it's important to have that time, right, for them to have play time, for them to have work time, and having that routine, you know, set up, because as we know, you know, many kids do enjoy you know, having some structure, you know, in their classroom as well. So I think it's important to have listen to your child and you know, focus on the different needs that they may have, you know, when it comes to learning.
That's a good point. I have a son and a daughter. My daughter's always studying. I walk into my son's room, check his history, game after game after game. Thanks, Suan. Sethi, basically the same question to you. Your children at home, what have you found that's really worked for them from the school?
Well, again, that's structure. So clear expectations, that has helped a great deal when, especially because, I mean, I've got a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old, and the 7-year-old loves having choice because that's the way our classes are set up and our school is set up. And so they get to have a lot of choice. But that doesn't necessarily translate well when everyone's still trying to figure out different programs and different software to use and different ways of getting that content across. And so there were clear expectations of, okay, like, here are 7, you know, optional activities, but we do expect you to complete this many by that time. And that really gave him sort of a sense of, I know what I'm doing, even though we're all practicing and we're all learning new things. And I know what's expected, and therefore I'm going to try my best. And so that's something I've seen from the parent side. On the other hand, it's just been amazing to be at home with the children and seeing their progress. And like Suan was saying, seeing what they do in the classroom, because even though they go to the school I work at, you don't see them in the classroom with their friends, with their teachers. And so that's been an absolute joy to see. Flip side of that is when you're trying to teach a lesson to a different group of students and you've got a 3-year-old running around, that's not always ideal. But yeah, you learn to sort of find ways that it works.
Tim, over to you. Now, I know your child's a little bit too young to be online studying, but I'm just curious to know, what about parents? Have they been contacting you in the summer, asking about the new year? What are their concerns? How have you been supporting parents at Stanford in Hong Kong?
There has been. Before the school year ended, we sent out communication to parents with some of the tools that we were going to leave active. So your IXLs, your big universe, some reading tools, math tools, literacy tools that we do use, but we left them active where we normally bring them down. We sort out the rosters, give them a good clean out, but we didn't. We left them online as much as possible because we just knew families won't be traveling, they'd be at home. And we just pushed out some of the middle school students who talk about Google, the digital skills and stuff like that. We haven't done anything official with them. We just said, maybe you want to go and explore this. Apple have got some stuff, whatever, anything that you we have that the students can maybe get on with over the summer. And we've done that then. But parents have been supportive. The first 2 weeks were a challenge because nobody knew what was going on. We'd like, how long is this going to go on for? And then I think they realised, and big up to our staff here, that we were doing a good job. Even if I say so myself, the teachers were amazing. They realised actually this isn't as bad as it could be. Then it's the not knowing that regardless of your role or who you are. It's like we're going back online now, but for how long? Is it going to be till end of September? Is it going to be till Christmas? I think that's what's more worrying for people, which then is a well-being issue and something completely different. Then.
Yeah, that well-being aspect, obviously we haven't touched upon that, but very, very important. We're just running up on the 30 minutes. Swan, I just wanted you've got a big event happening on August the 12th. Do you want to quickly mention that?
Yep, Anywhere School is the name of the program. So if you just Google Anywhere School with Google for Education, this is a global event that we're running. It used to be called EDU on Air, and this year we're calling it Anywhere School. And it's a global event that's going to, kick off in the US, and it's going to go, time zone across the world. So I think by the time it hits sort of Australia, New Zealand, and Asia Pacific, it'll be sort of August 12th. On our time. Anyway, check it out. I think we've got a whole lineup of great speakers. I think Sal Khan from Khan Academy is going to be on. Again, just another interesting forum to discuss and look at how different parents, educators are handling the current situation. And I know it's you probably have heard a lot of it, but I just wanted to say and extend my thanks to all educators and teachers everywhere, just because of the hard work that you've had to do going back and forth during this period and beyond as well.
Thank you very much, Swan. Really appreciate your time. You mentioned Sal Khan. You're going to be on that Anywhere School. And former AppsEvents speaker Dean Stokes is going to be on the EMEA stream as well. Really looking forward to it. Swan, thank you very much. Go and enjoy your evening.
Thanks, guys, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Cheers. Tim, we'll bring you back a little bit later because you're coming in. Do you want to mention your session real quick? What will you be talking about in a couple of hours?
Yeah, so I'm going to be looking at Google Slides and using it in a completely different way, looking at using it for app prototypes, using the linking slides, publishing to web, etc. Great way to use what is already a great tool in a different way. I'll also be back and forward in the chat there as well then, and obviously following the live stream then.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tim. We'll talk to you in a little bit.
Cheers.
Okay, so I mean, really, this gentleman doesn't need much of an introduction, but here it is anyway. Sethi the Clerq, known Sethi probably 6 or 7 years now, and many years ago he started a YouTube channel, and it has grown a little bit. I'll let Sethi talk about that in a moment. He's going to be talking about back to school in the blended classroom, and I'll actually just bring Sethi in for 1 second. Hi, Sethi. So obviously we just heard from you. Talk about the silver plaque on the wall, please. What does that mean?
Yeah, well, we've crossed 100,000 subscribers on the channel, so I'm celebrating that, and YouTube has very kindly sent over the silver play button. So yeah, still buzzing about that one. But
congratulations! Well, actually, you're way past. I mean, actually, you're far past 100,000. What are you at now, Sethi?
161,000.
Well done. It's an amazing channel. If you're watching this, Sethi does create some amazing videos for his channel. We're also lucky to have Sethi on the AppsEvents channel, doing tips and tricks videos as well with Acer. So let me just bring your screen in, Sethi.
Thank you.
Okay. Let me know when you're ready to go.
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
All right. Thank you. Off you go.
So today we're just going to have a quick look at sort of that blended model and that flipped classroom teaching, because I think with all this upskilling and all the teachers that have sort of put all this time and effort into learning new tools and learning new programs, and I really don't want to see this, get lost once we all go back into our schools or into the classroom. And so what I've tried to do is I've made a little overview in this slideshow. It's a very short one. It's going to be about 20-25 minutes that we're going to go through this, of how you can use some of these Google tools that we all have access to with our G Suite accounts, and how they can be used for that flipped classroom, blended classroom model. Now, the first thing I'm going to show you is just this little graphic that I got off of the UTexas website. The link is there. If you click on it, you'll go straight to their website. They have some amazing videos on what exactly flipped classroom teaching is, what a blended model is. And this image really sort of highlights the main difference between standard classroom teaching and flipped classroom teaching. So mainly the big difference is that the bulk of the work and the information that is being shared is done by the students at home. So teachers are sending interactive activities, they're sending videos, basically what we've all been doing during this lockdown. So they're sending all this to our students, they study this at home, they look at it, and they come prepared to the classroom with questions. They come with their questions, with their findings, maybe some additional research. And so during the classroom, it's all about applying those key concepts. So applying what they've learned, finding out why things work a certain way, finding out those answers to the questions they had and they couldn't find the answers to at home. And so then when they've done that, you then send them back off and they do some additional research. So it's really about deepening their understanding of a concept. So it's not just about finding the answers to a problem or finding the answers to a question asked. It's really about deepening their understanding of it and really understanding a problem rather than just finding the answer, because we are trying to get our students ready to answer ungoogleable questions. So they all have smartphones, they all have their devices, they have Chromebooks. The world is just full of information. It's so easy to find an answer. I often get questions, even in the comment section on my channel, where so how do you do this? And really all it takes is 1 or 2 Google searches and you've got the answer. And so we are trying to get them prepared for those ungoogleable questions and answers. Now, here are a number of tools at the bottom, and you'll probably recognize a lot of these icons. And these are some of the tools that I feel have really helped in that before the classroom. So traditionally, what we would do is we would get our students into the classroom, and then we give them some information, and then we give them some questions or follow-up activities. Now, in the flipped classroom, we're going to give them materials that they can start researching, they can look into it, and then we're going to have that follow-up later on. And so with distance learning, this has happened a lot more. Teachers have been making videos, teachers have been setting out online lessons, fully interactive. And so that's something that I really want everyone to continue doing. And later on, there's actually a session with Tanya, who's going to show you how you can make amazing videos and screencasts and how you can use those to then, again, impart that content and just share with your students. Now, here we're going to look at students completing interactive learning modules and things like that online. Now, Google Classroom has been an amazing help. Now, if you want more on Google Classroom, the AppsEvents channel has lots of videos with little tips and tricks on Google Classroom and how you can use it. And obviously, Google Classroom can be used to share so many different forms of information. You can share PDF files. It's linked to its own calendar. You can share doc files. But what I want to highlight is a tool that I think is still often underused, and that is the Google Forms. Now, Google Forms is incredibly useful because what some people still not realize is that you can actually put video into a Google form, and it's super easy to do so. So when you open up a Google form, and we're just going to do forms.new. Now, if you want to find this presentation, there's a link at the bottom of my slides. You can click on everything yourself, and then you'll find these resources as well. So here, first thing we can say is, okay, what's your name? And we're just going to set that to a short answer, make it required, which is something I tend to do because otherwise they can just skip questions. And then instead of adding a question with that plus, what we're going to do is we're going to select that video. Now here we have our video search. It's a YouTube search. I've already prepared a video right here. I'm going to right click on that, copy that URL, and just pop it into that second tab. Now, doing that allows me to now use this video in my forms. And that means that you're not limited to just your standard questions. You don't just have to ask, how did this and this work? How did that work? You can actually give them a video and then have some follow-up questions. And because we can also insert different sections, we can have them continue to the next section, or we can choose a sort of the form of a choose your own adventure where you set it all up, where they watch a video and then based on that video, they choose a different path by answering different questions. And so I think Google Forms is incredibly powerful, especially for that blended classroom, because you can have forms, you can still use them even during in-person lessons, and have it all prepared. If you have any absent students or students that have been unable to join your class, they can access it remotely. So Google Forms is definitely one of my go-to apps right there. Now, moving on to the second big block of the blended and flipped classroom is during the classroom. Now, during the classroom, obviously, they're not there in the classroom. And when they are, then what we tend to do as teachers is we tend to give a lot of group work because we want them to collaborate, talk to each other. And that's something that has been happening online more and more. So we've seen people we've seen Google Meet being used, we've seen Zoom with breakout rooms, we've seen Microsoft. Many of these other platforms are now introducing breakout rooms as well. So that's, again, something that they've seen. It works, something teachers want. And so we're bringing that to these different platforms. Now, here I've highlighted, again, the first one is Google Classroom, because Google Classroom is a great place, leaving comments and having your students interact with that content, leaving a comment and then have someone else comment. That is very, very powerful. But the ones I want to highlight are these three. Now, the first one is Google Docs. Now, Google Docs is incredibly useful. We all know how Google Docs works, but there's two specific functions within Google Docs that I found to work incredibly well. And that is whenever you're leaving a comment, so let's say that I leave a comment right here, you can @mention people. So when you type the @ or plus symbol, it pulls up all the people in your G Suite domain, and then you can just simply add that person. They'll get notified, and then that comment is specifically for them. So that is very, very powerful and incredibly useful within Google Docs. In addition to that, I've already shared this file with James before. And often what I've seen is people resharing a file to then add some information, or they reshare a file and then they want to ask a question. And sometimes what happens is as they reshare it, they tend to change some of the settings. So they change the sharing settings. Now, because I've already shared this file with James, what I can do now is I can go into File, and then under Email, I can email him as a collaborator because he is collaborating on this document. And so here, when I click on Email Collaborators, it pulls up everyone with access to this document. You can now remove the people that do not need to get this updated information, or this question might not be relevant to them. Well, you can just take them out and then send an email to just those collaborators that need to be informed of the changes within Google Docs. And again, everything I am discussing here, I'll leave it in the slideshow. You can always just share this with teachers, share it with friends, colleagues, anyone who may find it helpful. The second one I'm highlighting is Google Slides. And the reason I want to show you this Google Slides one is because there is a add-on, and this was actually written by Clerq. And if you know about Clerq, there's some incredible extensions and add-ons. And this one allows you to give feedback by recording a video using your built-in webcam, and then that video gets popped into your slideshow. So here you can see I have my slideshow open. I've already installed that extension, and so at the top you can see there's an extra icon right here, this little plus icon. Now when I click on that, it pulls up my webcam feed. I can record my video. It automatically uploads it to Google Drive, and then it embeds it onto that slideshow. So when we're talking about giving feedback to your students and instant feedback after they've done the work or even during the work, this is an incredible game changer. So I just wanted to highlight that one as well. Now, if you click on it, just click right here, and then you'll be sent to the Chrome store and you can install that. And then the next one that I wanted to highlight is Google Chat. Now, we all use Google Meet, and many of us have used Google Meet with our students. Now, I've used Chat with some groups, and I found it to be an incredibly easy to use tool, especially for sort of those students that are not comfortable with the webcam and they don't really want to share, but they're fine using a chat room. And what we've used it for is for breakout challenges and sort of escape room-like activities. And so we had a chat room, we had it all set up. They had to try and problem solve in that chat room. It's actually an idea I got when I attended the Google Innovator Academy, where we all had to try and break out of a box. And so I tried to do that with my students, and it worked so well. They absolutely loved using Google Chat for that. They were problem solving, they were sharing images and screenshots. And having these new threads in your rooms allows you to really break it up into chunks of content. So you could have a breakout challenge, one thread, everyone adds to it. Once they've done it, you can have a second challenge, a different thread. And so this is available to G Suite. I'm hoping whoever's watching this from Google, please make it available to personal accounts as well, because I absolutely love using this feature of having these different threads within a single room. So that is the third one I wanted to highlight. And that is really during your class. So as you're problem solving, as you're working together, collaborating. And then finally, what we're going to do is after that class, after sort of the bulk of content has been discussed or shared with students, what you can then do is really check for your students' understanding. And what I tend to always talk about is creation over consumption. So I want to see my students create. I want to see them share what they've learned. I want to see them dive deeper by presenting that information rather than just consuming something, answering questions, and moving on. And so the one I wanted to highlight here is Google Sites. Now, Google Sites is incredibly easy to use. Students love using it. And what I did was I simply highlighted the template gallery here at the top. And as soon as I showed that template gallery to both teachers and students, they fell in love, because a blank page can be a little bit scary. When you see that blank page, you have to start putting your own images and videos and text. Whereas when you give them a template and they simply change the images or change that sort of placeholder text or placeholder image, it really takes the pressure off and it helps your students to focus on the content they are sharing. So they're creating content and then they're sharing it. And so as soon as they can start creating these websites, they can share them with others, they can collaborate on different websites, have different pages. All these pages are nested underneath each other. So you can keep a nice sort of overview. You have a portfolio of all the work your students have done and also how much they've reflected on that research that they've completed within their sessions. Now, Google Sites, again, it has its limitations. So you'll see as you're playing around in Google Sites, there are some things that you can't do, but many updates have rolled out. So we now have slideshows and other things. If you are still seeing things that you'd like to be able to do and you can't do it, I highly recommend that you look up W3 Schools, which is a website where you can learn about HTML and CSS. And using some very basic HTML and CSS code, you can usually get something done within Google Sites that was previously not possible. So I've even been able to embed some JavaScript code and have like hover effects on different buttons and things like that by simply going to W3 Schools and looking for that effect. So that is something that you can do with Google Sites. And I absolutely love how easy it is to use because it acts like a file. The old sites, it was separate. This one, again, you can share with others. It lives in Google Drive. Everything is in one place. You can easily pull it into your Google Classroom and just collaborate. And that is the main one for sort of that reflection after the class. Now, I have a lot of other icons here. And as you can see, we've got Google Classroom, Docs, we've got our slides, because often slides can be used. And you'll see that with Tim's session for many different things, not just slideshows. You can use slides for all sorts of things. I sometimes even use it as an alternative to sort of Publisher when you're trying to get the layout of an ebook all set up, and Google Slides will do just the thing you need it to do. Then Google Groups is another one. And Groups has had a bit of a revamp. And so I do like the new interface. I would highly recommend that you have a look at it. See if it's something for you. Maybe it is for some of your older students, maybe for colleagues, little work groups, or maybe some collaboration that can take place there. I do use Groups. I don't use it as much as I use the chat rooms, but Groups, I can definitely see where it fits in to the G Suite sort of environment. And then we have Sheets and Forms, and obviously the Chrome browser as well. And then I just want to leave you with these three little things. Just remember, don't flip your classroom just because you have to. You don't have to do it. Do it because it impacts your students. If it's right for your students, then try to flip your classroom. If you're not quite sure, start with blended. Maybe introduce some concepts of that flipped classroom. See if it works. And if it works for your students, go for it. If it's not the right thing for your students, you don't flip your classroom. Always start from your students. Know your audience and then start from your students. The second one is don't use EdTech just because it's the latest popular thing to do. You see these things on Twitter sometimes where the latest application is sort of getting a lot of getting a lot of traction and people are all raving about it, but always approach it from your why. Why are you going to switch platforms? Why are you using Zoom? Why are you using Meet? I've used both platforms with different groups, and I know exactly why I'm using Meet with one group of students and why I might not use Meet with that group of students. So always start from the why. What are you trying to do? What are you trying to get your students to sort of work with? And then make a selection based on that. If pen and paper is the best way to do it, please use pen and paper. And then the last thing is, don't teach an app or don't teach a tool, but use it as a way to solve a problem, transform learning, or meet your goals. Now, I'm saying this from someone who has a channel where I do teach a lot of tips and tricks and sort of I do teach different apps, but I always approach my videos from that. I'm going to try and solve a problem. I'm going to try and change the way a lesson flows, or I'm going to try and enable students to become creators over consumers of content. And so if you approach your flipped teaching or your flipped classroom from that angle, I think you're going to be a lot more successful. And then that brings me to my last slide, where I just say thank you. Thank you for listening to me, just talking and sharing all these things. Now, if you want to get your hands on this slideshow, just go to prezo.eduflip.net and then /summer July, and then you'll find the slideshow. Everything is linked. You can have just a quick little refresher so you know exactly what I was on about. And then here at the bottom, you've got my Twitter handle and a link to my YouTube channel. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sethi. And just quickly to add to that, if you're watching this stream, if you're not watching live, if you're watching this on YouTube, we are going to break this up into chapters and put all of those links into the description on the YouTube channel, on the actual YouTube page for this stream. Thank you, Sethi. And I just actually wanted to pick up on a couple of things you mentioned. You were talking about doing tutorials. I know that in a moment we're going to welcome Tanya LeClair, and she's going to talk about screencasting specifically. So let's not talk about the video creation process, but I'm just curious, behind the scene on YouTube, you have access to a lot of data. A quick question,
Absolutely.
Without going into too much depth about the data, but how could teachers use that data when they're thinking about designing videos?
Well, the main thing I would say is the audience tab. So as you are looking at your sort of data of YouTube videos, you can see what people are using. So are they on mobile devices? Are they on laptops? Are they on the Windows ecosystem, Chrome or Mac OS? And so one of the reasons that some of my videos are a little bit more towards sort of the Google ecosystem and the Microsoft ecosystem is because I can see that my audience is on those platforms. If the vast majority of my viewers was using let's say that they were on a MacBook, well, then obviously the way you explain things to your students, if you see that 75% is on Mac, you may want to use that terminology. Whereas if 75% of your students are on Windows or Chrome devices, then use those shortcuts, use that terminology. And that's something you can see on YouTube very clearly in terms of your audience.
And I'm curious, picking up on that, for the tutorials that you create, what do you find are the most popular devices for viewing YouTube?
The most popular devices for viewing, it depends on the content. So there's different content. When it's sort of the tutorial content, definitely Windows and Chrome devices. So they are the ones that are used most often. However, what you will see is many people will start watching a video on a mobile device, and then they'll actually share it with themselves, or they'll transfer it onto a larger device when they try to put it into sort of practice. Many people, from my data, what I can see, they'll watch a video, even when they watch it twice. The first time it'll be on mobile, second time on a computer, a laptop. And that's probably because then they're actually going through all the steps explained.
And I mentioned that because James Abela is watching as well. He's watching from his car in Kuala Lumpur. He's watching on 4G. I've noticed that also a number of students have been watching their videos, their video classes actually from different places, of course, from maybe parents' offices, from a shared space, or even from the car. Have you found like access to videos and learning? Have you found it's benefited your classes last semester? Absolutely.
Even the many videos that some of the colleagues have created videos, and they're like, oh, I really don't want them on YouTube, but they can use Google Drive. And if you change the sharing settings on Google Drive, you have that same engine. You don't have all that sort of data behind it, but you still have that platform that allows you to quickly share videos, and students have responded to video. They much rather watch a short little video than read 2 or 3 chapters. And that's key, I think. Keep it short, because when we are talking about sort of creation over consumption, we don't want them to just watch an hour-long video of you just ranting or you just going over boring content, and keep it interactive. Maybe take that 1-hour session, break it up into 5-minute videos, and in between those videos, have interactive activities for your students. And then you can use, like I showed, you can use forms. Have that first 5-minute video, have a number of follow-up questions, tell them to go and create something, share it with you, and then move on to the second video. And just it's almost, I mean, James Zabella will be able to say more about this, but it's almost like sort of gamifying your content. So it makes it more fun for the students, but it also makes it more fun for the teacher.
Well, thank you. What I want to do now, Sethi, just for the last couple of minutes here, I want to actually bring in somebody I think you already know. So I'm going to bring in Tanya LeClair. Let's give her a quick warning here. Hi, Tanya, you're on screen.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. And good evening. Where are you now, Tanya?
I'm in Seoul, Korea.
Fantastic. And you moved there, what, a year ago, I believe?
I did. I moved last year about the same time.
And what school are you at now in Korea?
I'm at a Seoul Foreign School. So if you know Korea, it's quite large, but I'm at Seoul Foreign School there, and I'm the high school digital learning coach there.
Fantastic. And are you enjoying, I mean, obviously this year's been a little bit unusual, but how is Korea going? Have you been enjoying Korea?
Oh yeah, it's great. The school is wonderful, and my neighborhood's really kind of a mix of old and new. People are great. There's so much to see and do in Seoul, so it's fantastic. I mean, yeah, the pandemic's put a bit of a damper, but you could be in worse places for it. So,
I love Korea. We've run a really great event at Chadwick School in Songdo before, for I think 4 times now. Amazing place. Right. The reason I wanted to bring you in, Sethi and Tanya, you know each other because
Google Innovator.
That's right. Google Innovator, which year?
Yeah.
From 2019.
Right? Oh, yeah. From last year.
Google Innovator is, I can honestly say, I mean, I'm really excited for Georgina that she got in. It's some of the best PD I've ever done. It is just, it's hard work. It's exhausting, but it's incredibly rewarding. It is just so much fun. I highly recommend it to apply to anyone. If you have a chance, go for it. It's well worth it.
Yeah, the whole process, it's so creative. You meet so many cool people. You get to kind of see the back, kind of behind the scenes at Google there. And we did in Singapore, which was really fun. And you just learn so much. And you get so many great connections to bring forward.
And the food is amazing. You have to say that. The food at Google is absolutely amazing.
They have 1 million kitchens. It's the best. Yeah.
Quick hi to Aileen Apollo, just in case she's watching. She's at Google in Singapore. And actually, whilst we're talking about Singapore, I just wanted to mention, if you're thinking after this event, how can you engage with communities? If you're thinking about the Innovator Academy, the GEGs are a great grassroots group of communities. And there's probably a GEG in almost probably every city or every country in Asia. I know the Philippines has a huge number of GEGs. Korea does now as well. Probably 15 GEGs in Korea at least. So it's brilliant. If you're thinking, how do you get into this? GEGs is a great place to start. Very quick question about the Innovator Academy. What was your biggest takeaway? Starting with Sethi, what was your biggest takeaway from the Innovator Academy? What was the biggest win for you?
For me, just the connections with the people that you meet at the academy, and it's just a whole new PLN. So we all have our different PLNs and sort of groups and people that we work with, and this is, again, Georgina's gonna like hearing this, but this is another tribe. It's another tribe to add to your PLN, and it's people that, if you bump into them, like let's say that tomorrow we bump into each other, it's going to be just memories, and we're going to exchange things, and then you continue to learn from each other, and that's what I just love that.
And Tanya, to you, same question, biggest takeaway?
I mean, Sethi took the words out of my mouth. The connections are amazing. However, also connections you make after the fact, like my mentor is wonderful with my Google Innovator project, Simone. She and I chat frequently about the project. And then Other things were there were so many little sessions and little bites of information, and I always love learning new ways to use products or tools that I've already been using. And so that you just your brain is full when you leave. And so you take away so many ideas and you're really inspired when you leave. So yeah.
Well, brilliant. Thank you. And Georgina, who will be joining us in about 30 minutes, she is joining the first Virtual Innovator Academy. So it's very exciting. And I'll ask about the preparation for that a little bit later. Sethi, thank you very much. Your details will be in the description for this video if you're watching this later. Otherwise, you can catch, I'm sure you saw Sethi's Twitter handle that's on screen right now. You can follow him there. Yeah. Thank you very much, Sethi. You have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, just a quick, obviously we just met you, Tanya, of course, and most people probably know you on Twitter already, Tanya. Just a quick intro. So Tanya, you're joining us to talk about, what's your session about, Tanya?
I'm going to talk about screencasting, a little bit kind of piggybacking on what Sethi was talking about, but some of the ways that you can enhance your screencasts or think about streamlining your process so that you can make really engaging videos for your students.
Fantastic. And I want to say personally, thank you very much for joining us. We tried to connect last year. It didn't work out. This year has been very unusual. It's great to welcome you to the channel, Tanya, and we look forward to welcoming you again in the future. Right, I'll let you go ahead.
Okay, great. So hi, everyone. I already pressed the wrong button. Okay, welcome to my session. My name is Tanya LeClair. You can find me on Twitter at Tanya LeClair, and my website is tanyaleclair.org. I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about screencasting. I know that many of us are in the depths of online learning, and we are kind of thrown into this situation where we are the director, we are the producer, we are the editor, we are the everything of lessons that we're presenting on maybe it's Google Classroom, maybe it's YouTube, but to your students. And a lot of these things are new to some of us. I know that I've been making a lot of screencasts as a coach for the teachers that I work with on new tools. And I've learned a lot about how to make the process easier. Some of the tools that I really love using. And I just want to share some of those tips and tricks and some of the things I've learned with you today. So to begin, I'll just kind of go with what I'm going to present today. First, we're going to talk a little bit about some presentation strategies and principles of multimedia, things to think about before you record, some questions to ask yourself, some tips and techniques that I've gathered along the way, and some questions to think about when you're doing post-recording, and also some of the screencasting tools that I find are my favorites. So let's get started. So multimedia principles. In the book Multimedia Learning by Richard Mayer, he discusses 12 principles that shape the design and organization of multimedia presentations. And these are kind of highly used in instructional design. And some of the stuff they maybe touch on in school, if you're in your master's or if you're in your school for education. But I find as teachers who've been regularly teaching in the classroom, these may not have been things that we've been thinking about. And so now that we're going into that online teaching sphere, it's definitely something to consider. So I wanted to pinpoint 4 of those. The first one is called signaling. And what this is using on-screen text or symbols to highlight important information. So an example of this would be on-screen symbols like highlighting important words, using animated arrows, pointing out significant information, maybe with the little circles that go around the pointers, things of that nature. By doing that, you are showing your learner what they can pay attention to on screen. And this can be done too. I mean, even if you're using something as simple as a pen and paper and a document camera, you can go through and just do some quick annotations while you're teaching. And it's the same as when you're using manipulatives in the classroom, the same as using your whiteboard, but really you're just doing that on screen. And some of the tools that I'm going to share with you, some of them you may already know about, have some kind of highlight features like this. So I'll show those to you later. The next one is called segmenting. And sorry, I'm going to go back and then forward. The next one is called segmenting. And that one is chunking information so that learners can engage easily with your content. So learners kind of learn better when the pieces of information are presented to them in a way that are maybe separate and not all jumbled together largely on the page. This can be in how you visually present information through repeating colors, through repeating icons. This can also be how you split larger lessons into smaller videos. I know that Sethi had mentioned splitting maybe a long lesson into shorter video segments and including those into a form. And that was one of the things I was actually going to share with you as well. It's a great way to take information, break it up, add some questions in there. And that would be an example of this principle called segmenting. So just kind of breaking it apart, making it easy for your learners to consume the information. The next one is called weeding. Not weeding like in your garden. I know that some of you may enjoy that, not me, but this is weeding, but for information in your lessons. And that's removing the things you don't need, keeping it simple. I know that it's hard for us when we see PowerPoint or Google Slides presentations that may have so much information on the page, you don't really know where to look. So that's when you have to start taking out the weeds, and that's what weeding means. And it's based on Mayer's principle of coherence. It states that humans learn best when extraneous or distracting material is not included. So for example, if music is too much, if it's distracting from the lesson, take it out. Or if you have complex backgrounds and they may be taking away from your visuals, consider if they're improving or if they're taking away from your lesson objectives. Animations that require the learner to judge whether they should be paying attention or not, those are always confusing. So really keeping the things that enhance your message and taking things away that may kind of deter from it. That's taking out the weeds. Yeah, so that's one that I always think about, especially when I'm doing visual presentations as well. So it's an important one. And the final one I'm going to highlight from the 12 is just called multimedia. And it's essentially meaning that using both audio and visual channels to convey new information is the best way to have your message impact your learners. So humans learn best from words and pictures. I know I do. And so thinking about different ways that you can ensure your visuals are enhancing your lesson. Rather than having maybe a stark background with just text, maybe thinking about icons, thinking about images or photos that you can use to help this. There are a lot of sites online that give you free access to icons. I know that I use Flat Icon quite a bit, and Google Slides has tons of add-ons in there. So if you're making a presentation on Google Slides and you're like, oh, I'd rather put an icon in than a word, well, go into these add-ons, use Flat Icon, use Noun Project, those are in there, and you can add an icon in instead of a word, and that really will hit home with your learners. Also sites like unsplash.com or pexels.com, they can give you some free Creative Commons 0 images that you can use. You don't have to cite, but you can cite the author, but these are other ways to add some visuals without maybe doing anything copyright infringement or anything like that. But yeah, just considering ways in which you can add to your message by adding both text, visuals, and audio as well. So something I always think about. And these are the 4 that I kind of narrowed in on. I know there are more, and I'm going to share some resources with you on how you can read about all 12 multimedia principles, but these are the 4 to keep in mind for today. So now I want to talk about before you record, the things that you want to think about before you even get on video. And these are some of the things, some of the questions that you want to ask yourself. The first one is, what are your learning objectives? And how will you achieve them with the screencast? You really want to think about, again, the chunking of information, the segmenting of information. Think about what's really important. We don't want to overload. I know that gosh, sometimes I've sat down and I think, oh, I can put all this stuff into my video, it'll be great, and then I'll put it on Google Classroom, and then 6 minutes in or 7 minutes in, I pretty much lost everyone's attention. So think about the learning objectives you have, and if they should all be in one video, or if you can take them, break them apart, and make them relevant in different smaller videos. Another thing you can ask yourself is what your script will be and how will you access it when you record. You may not always have a script. I know I don't always. Sometimes I just have some kind of bullet points on a sheet of paper or on a Google Doc and I follow those. But sometimes you may want to have something a little bit more in depth if you want to ensure you're not missing some of your learning objectives. One way that you can do this is you can install an add-on called Script Slide, and you can find this just in Google Slide add-ons. And what this does is it allows you to use a secondary device as a slide notes keeper, so you can read your notes at the same time as your slideshow is presenting on your computer screen and you're recording your screencast. It's pretty helpful. It's also something you can use if you're presenting in front of a crowd. Yeah, so if you really want to have your phone kind of propped up on the side, you can have your computer in front of you. You can add this add-on and then, go for it. All you do is you scan the QR code they give you with your phone, and all of a sudden your slideshow is right up there. So that's one way of doing it. Another way of accessing notes while you're presenting in a screencast is if you're using Mac products, you can use Sidecar, which is a way for you to use your iPad as a secondary screen. I'm actually doing that today, secrets. I've got my iPad just above my computer. And so as I am flipping through my slides presentation here, I can see any notes. And I'm kind of ignoring them anyway, but whatever, it's there. So that's another way that you can access notes while you're doing your presentation and while you're recording, kind of looking like a pro. So hopefully anyway. So another question you can ask yourself is, will you appear in the video, and what will your surroundings be? I know that I don't have I'm in my dining room right now, so my surroundings is my back of my wall, but you want to think about what's behind you, what are people going to see, and is anyone going to walk behind you? I know that people have all these funny stories from, ever since we've gone to online learning, of people not realizing that they're walking behind a video. So it's good to keep it in mind, especially if you have a busy household. Maybe your child is running around in the back, think about that. Think about your lighting as well, if you can. You don't want it to be too dark. I have kind of every light on in my house right now, just so I could look sort of normal. So yeah, think about your lighting. And then I would suggest appearing in the video. Students always react better when they can see their teacher, when they hear that familiar voice, but they also see your face and they can see the expressions that you have. So consider putting yourself in the video. It always hits home a little better. And even if you have to kind of go back and forth between showing yourself and showing your screen in full, it's always nice to have that connection and remind your students that you're there. So you know what, put yourself in the video. You'll get used to it if you don't love it. I know I had to, so it's something you can give a try. And then the last one is, will you insert questions into your video, and how will learners share their answers? I always think that engagement's really impacted in a positive way when you can insert some questions or some interactivity into your videos. And you can do this in numerous ways. Like Sethi mentioned, the form, having smaller videos with questions below the video, and then students can answer those as they're watching. There are other tools that I'm going to share with you for this, and some of them you may be familiar with, but finding ways to get students to give back to what you're dishing out to them. You want to find out what they're thinking, and you want to give them ways to respond to you. So we'll talk about that. So here are some tips and techniques that I want to share with you, and some of them will kind of piggyback on the information that we just mentioned. And the first one is thinking about slide design. It should work with your recording format. And what I mean by this is, most of the time when you're doing a screencast, not today with me, but your face will be kind of in the bottom right-hand corner. It depends on what you're using. If you're using Screencastify, for example, that's where your face will be. So if you're making a slideshow, you want to think about not putting information there. And I know this seems so simple, but it's something that I really didn't consider until I sat down to start one of my first screencasts. And I was like, oh, whoops, I'm totally layered over a really key piece of information, and I don't want that to happen. So if you're designing your own slides, consider leaving things out of that space where your face will be, and it makes it a little bit easier. Let me show you an example of what you can do. One of my favorite things to use is Explain Everything. And the reason I like it is it's because it's one of the only apps I've found where you can do digital annotations and have your face, your picture embedded into the screen. You can move it around. So you can see that on the left-hand side of the screen there. I was just doing a tutorial. But it's one of the ones that I found after testing out a whole bunch. So that's one of my favorite tools. And they were actually very generous to give a free pro subscription to teachers at my school during the first part of digital or virtual learning. So they're a great company. I highly recommend the tool as well. Another one of my favorites is called Loom, L-O-O-M. And it's a Chrome extension. It's also an app and a site, but I really like the Loom Chrome extension because you can record right from your Chrome browser, and the little video icon they give you can be moved around the page. So while you're recording, you can make it bigger or smaller, and you can move it from left to right, up, down. So if you have some information in the lower right-hand corner and you just kind of can't control it, Loom would be a good choice. I'm going to do a little bit of a comparison of some of the tools a little later in the session here, but Loom also allows you to do unlimited time with your recordings, so that's one of the other benefits. So those are two I really like, and really depending on what device you're using, one might be better than the other for you, but that's one example of how you might customize your screen a little bit. So the next tip, our next couple of tips, is keep your speaking style conversational. Some studies have shown that when people are a little bit more casual, a little less robotic, I guess, people are a lot more apt to listen and stay engaged. And I know that you have a rapport with your students, but you don't have a rapport with your computer or yourself being recorded. So you have to kind of get over that a little bit, and it does get easier. I know that when I started doing recordings, I would try my best to, look at the camera and talk to this little, circle, and it was really difficult, but it does get easier. And when you see those reactions, when you see kids giving back to you and you kind of feel that they're enjoying it and that they're learning, then it really helps. But keeping that conversational tone in a bit of a casual but engaging way is always really nice. And then the next one is timing videos so you maintain student engagement. Keep them short. The ideal video length should be under 6 minutes. And I know that's hard, but there was a 2014 study analyzing results from 6.9 million video watching sessions, and researchers observed that the median engagement time for videos was less than 6 minutes long. Once they went past 6 minutes, engagement dropped. And this was with students of middle and high school age. So it's definitely something to consider. And I know that 6 minutes seems super short sometimes, but sometimes it can seem, just super long. It depends on your content. But thinking about that, thinking about chunking, thinking about making segments of videos, and then delivering them to students in ways like with the form, for example, would always be very helpful. So something to consider, and it's something I always try to think about as well, even though it's really hard at times. The next one is look at the camera and make eye contact. Sometimes I forget because I'm too busy looking at my slides or too busy looking at my hair and making sure that's not going crazy, but try your best. I'm trying it right now. And it's harder than it looks, I guess. We all have a tendency to look at our notes, and just something to keep in mind. You can always put something up by that camera, a little sticker or something to remind yourself, but just keep kind of repeating that over and over. Look at that camera. I'll give you a low-tech tip for making eye contact. You can put a Post-it up by your camera and put sticky notes up there, kind of right beside it, and just put a few reminders for yourself. Maybe a few key prompts, maybe some timestamps, or maybe just kind of a note to yourself to keep it within a time minimum. So that's just a low-tech tip, but Post-its are a great way to grab your attention and keep that right next to the camera so that you look at it every so often. The next tip is use annotations tools to direct viewer attention. One of the media principles mentioned was signaling, and this is underlining, highlighting, using pointers or visual cues. By doing this, you're directing your learners to where they should look. Annotation tools, like I previously mentioned, explain everything. You can also use whiteboard tools. I know Google Hangouts has some now, and Zoom, and also using things like Google Jamboard is really great because you can annotate and you can have that recording going at the same time. You can also have collaborative annotations on a call, record that and use it as a teaching tool as well. So it's just a way for you to kind of annotate, show learners where to look, and keep that learning going. Another really great tool or a great hack for this is why not use your tablet as a document cam and point that at whatever resource you're trying to show. So for example, if you have maybe it's a tablet of some kind or an iPad camera, you can point that at your resource. Maybe it's a piece of paper, maybe it's an image of some kind. This one's a sheet of music. You can record that, and you can use Meet or Zoom as your, record. You can record a call essentially, but really you're just recording yourself. Use that iPad or tablet camera as a second caller and then flip between the two. So it's almost like you have two callers. One is your second camera and one is your first camera. And you can go between the two and kind of use that as your recording structure. So I thought that was a really neat tip, and it's something that I haven't tried it fully. I've used my iPad as a second camera, but I've plugged it into my computer and used QuickTime to access it. But it's just one more way to kind of hack a couple of devices to make a really streamlined production. So look like a true professional if you do that one. Here's an example of one of the people that I think does such a great job. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Dr. John Campbell. He's on YouTube, and he is I feel like a doctor or a nurse practitioner, and he posts these daily videos about COVID-19 where he explains some of the things going on in the world. And he's he's got such a great conversational voice. He does such a great job of signaling and cueing. And I know that I tried to do this when I was practicing and the volume wouldn't work for me, but I essentially just want to show you how he does this. He uses a document camera and he just kind of underlines things as he goes.
People that weren't infected. So if we have the T cells, if we have the memory T cells.
All right, I won't stick on it forever, but what you can see is a little clip of that. I'm going to link that for you guys in the resources that I'm sharing. But essentially what he does is he just uses a pen of paper and he underlines as he goes. He speaks in a conversational tone. He's engaging. He's got the camera on him and it works amazingly. So very low tech, but just, you know, super effective, keeping some of these multimedia principles in mind. And then the last one I want to share with you guys in the bottom right-hand corner is increase engagement by adding elements of interactivity. And you can do this by adding questions in, like I mentioned before. You can use tools like Edpuzzle. Some of you may be familiar with Edpuzzle, but it's a way for you to embed questions right in a video so that when you share it with students, they watch it, and as they watch it, little prompts pop up, little questions pop up, and it asks them to answer them right on the spot. It keeps all of their answers on the Edpuzzle account that you create, and it's just a super awesome way for you to get feedback on your videos in real time and ensure that your engagement is staying high. Another way to increase interactivity is to use the trick with forms by embedding smaller videos in forms. What you can do is you can add some survey questions. You can add some long form questions for your students. And as they're watching the video, they can go through and they can give you feedback. And it's all, you know, kept in that one place in your forum response section. So that's another way to add in interactivity. And then the third one I have here is docs, and using docs as a way to use guided notes. So for example, I don't know if you've used guided notes before, but essentially you're kind of creating a little bit of a script on what you're talking about, on what they're seeing in the video, and then they can fill in those notes as they go. So they kind of know what they're looking for. They're looking for opportunities to input some of the things they're learning. And by doing this in a doc that you can share with the class, it's all kept in your drive in a safe place. So it's another way that students can follow along with the video, and it creates that layer of interactivity that we really want to have when we're using videos as lessons, because we're losing that in-person classroom experience. So it really creates a nice experience for you. So these are some bits and bobs that I had, and they didn't really fit into a category. So this tip doesn't quite fit, but here goes. Have you ever felt that your scroll goes too fast when you're trying to show a website or content on screen? I know mine has. Sometimes I'll be, using my mouse pad, or I'll be using the scrolly thing on my mouse, and I just kind of zoom through it, and then I have to go back, and it's very confusing for everyone. So one of the tricks that I've found is it's a Google extension called Smooth Scroll. And what you can do is you can add this Chrome extension, and it adjusts how fast your scroll goes. So this way you can still go, use your typical, pace that you're going when you use your mouse, but the scroll goes a little slower so that people can still comprehend what they're looking at. I know that it's kind of a minor thing, but it really does make a difference. This is a bit of a confusing slide to look at, but I assure you, all you do is you go in and put low numbers, and that means your scroll goes super, super slow. So hopefully that makes sense. Give it a shot, but it will help those brains that are trying to look at the information, see what they're actually supposed to see. So that's one tip for you. And another little quick tip that didn't quite fit in anywhere is when you're trying to present information on a Google Slides presentation and you're using a Chrome extension like Screencastify, sometimes when you hit present and you go full screen, it won't let you have that picture-in-picture embed. So basically it will just take you out of the equation, even if you want your video to be in there, your little bottom right-hand corner picture-in-picture. So what you can do is go into the URL of your slides presentation, take out the word edit, and replace it with the word present. And that way you can present your slides presentation, and your video picture-in-picture will still be in the bottom right-hand of your screen if you're using Screencastify. It's a bit of a little tip that's very specific to those tools, but it does help, because if you're using that one, you definitely want to maintain that picture-in-picture. So that's another little weird tip that didn't quite fit in, but hopefully works for someone. So now let's think about post-recording. You want to think about things like, how will you edit? Will you need to edit? Probably. You probably have to take off some bits at the beginning, some bits at the end, and you never know, some bits during. I know I always find myself needing to take out little stuff that I thought I had done right, but I didn't. So here are some tools that you might want to consider. I know that if you're using Apple products, iMovie is a popular one, and Apple Clips for iPad. I use it quite a bit, and it's great. It's a free tool. But if you're using the Chrome extension Screencastify, that one actually has an editing tool right in it. I believe you have to have the Pro version to get the most tools and the biggest kind of bang for your buck, but it definitely works wonderfully. And it saves right to Google Drive. So it's a really great editing tool attached to the screencasting tool. Another couple I really like is WeVideo. So if you're using a PC, you don't have access to some of these other tools, WeVideo is a great one, even if you're working on a Mac. But that's a wonderful tool for editing online, and there's free and paid versions. And then another new find recently is Adobe Premiere Rush for iPad or for a tablet as well. For Chromebooks, it works for any tablet that uses apps, but Adobe Premiere Rush has some really great titles. It has a really streamlined workflow, and I really like using it. So that's another one to check out if you're editing on a tablet. Now, another couple of questions is, how will you share, and are your videos easy to access later? This is important because a lot of times we'll share these videos with students, and maybe we don't want them to have to weed through a bunch of old Google Classroom posts or weed through their Drive perhaps to find the videos that you've shared with them. So some of the ways, or one thing you might want to consider is using a YouTube playlist. Here's an example of a YouTube playlist from the AppsEvents site. But essentially, if you're making a whole bunch of small videos, you can pop those into a playlist on YouTube, as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, and students can kind of just play those through. So if you have a whole bunch of concepts, say in math, you have a bunch of videos related to a certain topic from maybe it's a piece of literature, pop those all together and they play one after the other, and it's a really great way for you to access. It's also easy to share a link to a whole playlist too, so it's another benefit. And then, of course, using a tool like Padlet as well is one of my favorites. So just think about where you might be sharing to, and then how students can revisit that information. That's just one of the main things to think about, no matter how you want to do that. So some of the tools that are my favorites I want to share with you, and here's kind of this is from Edu Blogs, but they did a bit of a comparison of Loom, Screencastify, Screencast-O-Matic, and Zoom, and then kind of Google Meets and Zoom can almost go a little bit similarly here, just because they're both calling and recording features. But really, there's not one I find is better than the other. It all depends on what you want. So I like Screencastify because its connection to Google Drive. I love that once you record a video, it saves right to Google Drive. Super easy peasy, gives you a link right away to that file. It really couldn't get easier. But I love Loom if I know that I have a slide design where I want to move that little picture around. So it really does depend on what you're doing. I would say, though, that if you are I guess using a tool with students, you want to stick to one, just so that they're not kind of, maybe if they're younger, then you don't want them to get overwhelmed. But these are all awesome. I suggest trying them all and then finding the one that works best for you. I'm also going to link this to the resources that I give you so you can revisit it and see which ones might be the best. So I will share with you this Padlet. This is just a little picture, but essentially the Padlet looks like this. I've put all of the tools that I'm talking about and some of the resources that I've been using. I've cited those at the end of this presentation, but I'm going to give you guys this Padlet so that you can look back at it, and the presentation is in there as well. And you can also find them at these two bit.lys that I'm going to be sharing out. But essentially, I just want to say thank you. I'm glad I made it within the time I was given, and thanks a lot for being with me today. You can reach me on Twitter, the best, at Tanya LeClair.
Awesome. Thank you, Tanya. That was absolutely amazing. You got amazing feedback on the YouTube.
I have to read it.
Yeah, there's loads of comments there.
Okay.
In fact, I quickly wanted to bring up one comment because this is a really good sort of comment question. This was from Irma, and Irma's saying for art tutorials, she's finding she's struggling to make it into 6 minutes. She got a little bit of advice already, I think, from Sethi and a couple of others. What would you have for feedback for that one, Tanya?
Well, I find sometimes when you're doing certain tutorials, and this might apply to art as well, if you're in an editing feature, say you're using iMovie or WeVideo, if you have instances where speeding up a frame might work for you, that might be the best way to go. So if the information can still be communicated, maybe it's something that's nonverbal, maybe it's watching someone do a piece of art, speed that up 3 or 4 times and then use that segment as a super fast one. And then you can slow it down when you're actually giving verbal feedback.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Tanya. Amazing presentation. I think you epitomize the relaxed presenter. I love your studio. It's not a studio. I like your background. When you mentioned about the colors and the background, your dining room look there looks a very relaxed studio.
Oh, thank you so much. It's just starting to be evening here. So it's, better lighting.
Well, I just actually want to bring in, just before you go, just want to welcome Georgina to the stream. Hi, Georgina.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Welcome. And I love Georgina's background. Is this celebrating something?
I'm not so sure it's as relaxed as Tanya's, but we are definitely googly over here.
Absolutely. And the reason I wanted to bring you in was Tanya is here as well, because congratulations, you are joining the Virtual Innovator Academy.
Ah, yes. Thank you very much. Very exciting times.
So fantastic. And how's the preparation for that going?
It's really exciting, actually. I don't know if we're under NDA, if I'm allowed to disclose that stuff, actually, but we have all connected in a chat and we are getting our Googly on. We've already started creating some awesome things together. So yeah, I think we're kickstarting next week, actually.
Brilliant response, Georgina. Very neutral. I like it. Awesome. Tanya, thank you very much. You go and enjoy the evening.
Guys.
Look forward to welcoming you again. Hi, Georgina. So I'm just going to bring, actually, just in case people, I'm sure people know you already. You bring a big following, of course, Georgina. Georgina is well connected on social media, obviously for herself and with the Global GEG. Georgina, you want to just quickly mention the Global GEG?
Yeah, absolutely. So super inspiring group of EdTech leaders around the world from different Google educator groups connected together to support educators globally. Really inspiring content, really amazing group of people. So please join them. I'll drop the website in the chat. It's globalgeg.org. So you can check out that website and come get your Google on with us.
Great, and I'll post that in a moment. So you're here today to talk about creativity. It's great. We obviously had Sethi, well known for his tutorials. Tanya was talking about video creativity. And what are you going to be focusing on, Georgina?
Yeah, Tanya was brilliant. Thanks so much for that. Today, we are just basically looking at creativity with G Suite for Education. So we're taking a look at, obviously, there's loads of app smashing possible, and Tanya did such a brilliant job of sharing a bunch of creative video tools. So with my presentation, it's going to be just focusing on how can we use the basic applications of G Suite and how can we get creative with those. So supporting a greater access for all.
Brilliant. Georgina, if you want to share your screen, I'll bring it in.
Awesome.
And just whilst Georgina's getting set up here, remember, please share this out on Twitter. Please ask any questions on YouTube. We'll try and get a couple of questions to Georgina after this. I'll bring your screen in. Your screen's up.
Awesome. Okay, thanks so much, James, and thanks for having me today. Welcome to everybody in the chat. Nice to see some familiar faces, as always. Today's slide deck, as always, is interactive, so I do encourage all of you to hop on to the slide deck once James shares that out with everybody. And we are going to unpack back to school. So everybody is just around the corner from re-entry. So what does that look like? Some of us are returning, in person to the full school mode. Some of us are going to be in virtual only, and some are going back to a hybrid model. And so regardless of what model you're going back to, G Suite for Education is such an agile and flexible toolkit, I like to call it, that it's possible to use it flexibly across any model that you're re-entering. So let's take a look at some ways that we can do that together. Just waiting for the link to get out to you guys. Let me see if I can also drop that in the chat. All right.
Hey,
Please
Georgina. Yeah,
there we go.
Yeah, at the bottom, I've just got the link to your slides up on screen.
Ah, perfect. Thank you very much, James. Always savior of the day. Awesome. Okay, so I started to see some people hopping on now. That's perfect. So basically what we're going to do is, James already introduced me, so we can skip over slide 2. But if you would like to connect with me on any of the communities that I collaborate in, then you can click on these icons around the outsides and you can connect with us that way. So you're welcome to check those out. All right, who is ready to get googly? I am very excited. Okay, guys, so what we're going to do is we're going to grab the link in the Jam deck. So go ahead and click on the Jamboard icon on the right-hand side, and it will open you into this Jamboard here. So we want to get googly together, and I'd like to hear from you while we start investigating the different apps for G Suite. What are your favorite ways to get googly? Because we're going to talk about connection and social emotional learning being probably the most important aspect of reentry as we get back to school. And so I'd love to hear from everybody. If you can go ahead and grab a slide, your own Jam slide. Feel free to share out your name and your Twitter handle. Would love to connect with everybody. Grab a slide, either take some screenshots, drop some links in there, anything that is your favorite way to get googly with your students. So we will loop back to check out what you guys have shared in a minute, and I'll give you guys a few minutes to populate the Jam deck while we take a look at googly. So as you can see from the slide deck here, and I've left the copy open, as most of you probably already know in the chat, you're welcome to take a copy of the slide deck to remix for your lessons if you like. And we're going to go through and just take a look basically at the apps along the bottom and how we can use them creatively in education. So what we'll do is I want to start right here on slide 4 with why do we want to use G Suite for education? And I want to take a look at employability. And so it's probably no news for anybody in the chat, professional educators and education technology leaders around the world. But what is really interesting is the school of thought going more towards the 6 C's of learning. So I've embedded this article. You're welcome to go ahead and read that after the session, of course. But it basically talks about the 21st century skills, including 6 C's. And I know Suan was talking about Sylvia Duckworth earlier. So there's another awesome sketch note from her and Michael Fullen, accredited at the bottom there, talking about the 6 C's and how can we actually help and support our students to build these skills as they go throughout their learning journey at school, and how can we foster a culture that supports that growth. And so when they graduate, or I should say by the time they graduate from K-12, for example, or even from higher education, do they have the skills on the left that employers are actually looking for? So I really like the fact that character education, number 5 there, and then citizenship at the bottom, were added in this new school of thought. I know there's also a recent book come out with a 7th C as well. But just right here, we can see the importance of social emotional learning. So it's definitely something to keep in mind when we go back to school, and how can we continue building those throughout the entire school journey, not just, 1 week or 1 unit or 1 activity. Okay, so let's go back here and see how we can get googly together. I'm going to jump back to my Jamboard here and take a look. Before I reveal your wonderful ideas, I did notice, oh, hi, Victoria, and Shannon's in the chat, and welcome. Jane's with AppsEvents. Thanks, Jane. Nice to see you. And Dan, lovely. Okay, so with this Jamboard, guys, this is actually my favorite googly tool. It's right up there with Google Slides, but this is probably one of my favorite Google tools to engage with my learners, basically. And so this is a great example of something that you can use at the beginning of almost every lesson if you wanted to, and just change up the different types of activities that you have in the Jam deck. One of the really nice features about Google Jamboard is that it is anonymous. So as you can see all of those user icons at the top right of my screen, it's the same in the classroom. So whether you're in person or whether you are teaching and learning virtually, it is the same experience. And so it really allows even those learners that are a little bit more reserved to feel like they have a voice, and Jamboard is a way that it amplifies that. So for anybody who, I usually get this question when I throw this slide up, this is actually not a background. This is just me using royalty-free Google for Education images. So on the left-hand side of Jamboard, if you click on Add Images, you can see there that I was searching for a googly image. And so you can type that word. You could even add GIF at the end, or GIF, depending on how you pronounce it. And you can get animated images as well. So all of these follow the common creatives and are usable. So you just use images and sticky notes and your pen tool, and you can get creative. These light bulbs are all little images just lined up together. So it's a really great way to set it up. And what's really wonderful is that it's not always just about the teacher, the educators creating. You can also ask your students to create these as well. And we'll talk about that in a second with the 5 different parts of the lesson design. But whatever you choose to do, the more that you empower your students with the opportunity to create and share, the more engagement you're going to get from them. All right, so let's see what we have here. All right, so we have Shannon is on there with her Bitmoji, and I'm going to guess, because I have connected with Shannon before, that her Bitmojis are one of her favorite things, and she says images search are definitely googly. I would agree with that. And over here, encouraging staff to gain Google for Education certifications is a great way to get the entire school to be googly. I love that. That is so awesome. So shout out to the Google for Education Training Center, where you can actually obtain all of those certifications along the bottom. A great way to learn and collaborate as well. So I would totally agree. The more that you can actually encourage an entire community to get their googly on, then the more you're going to be able to inspire ideas together. So one of the things that I'm going to be doing when we go back to school is I'm going to be doing one of these activities with my staff and saying, what did you guys learn over the summer? What do you have to bring to the table? And doing that whole sharing thing at the school. So I love that, Dave. Thank you very much for your share. And do connect with these awesome educators. They're leaving their Twitter handles on the Jam slide. So that's awesome. Okay, Mel. Hi, Mel. Welcome. And you can follow her there. She's left her Twitter handle, and she's talking about Sheets to track student progress. That's great. So really simple tool like Google Sheets helps us to stay focused and on track. Love it. Google Classroom to share all things with everyone. Absolutely. And Suan was talking about that at the very beginning of today's summit, about how it was a result of all of the feedback that Googlers were sending in. And so I love that about G Suite that they're always taking our feedback on board and making that process better for everybody. But Google Classroom is definitely the place to be. Project-based learning like slides, Jamboard for collaboration, and Google Drawings. Yes, another jam that is often untapped at schools. We love that. And the Bitmoji, lovely. So Mel is enjoying her Bitmoji craze. That's awesome. Love it. Thank you for sharing, Mel. Shannon is joining us from Down Under. Hi, Shannon. And she also loves to use Google Drawings. And I'm really glad you said that, Shannon. We're going to be taking a look at that. Connect with Shannon for sure. There is her Twitter handle. And over here, we have Miss Katie, who is also joining the Innovator Via 20 program. So congratulations to her. Big shout out to this creative superstar and Googler, and super Googler indeed with Earth Project. So I'm really glad you mentioned that, Katie. Thank you very much. And it allows for shared experiences and it triggers conversations. I would totally agree. Imagine you've just like hopped on over somewhere, and what kind of conversation will that inspire with your students? So really great shout out there. Thank you, Katie. And I do have to say that I love your Bitmoji with the world there. That's super creative. Thank you. Google Slides was another shout out, and Jamboard. Absolutely. So much fun to engage. Quick Draw was also on there, so that's another shout out to Quick Draw and Auto Draw, also using AI free tools that were also mentioned, I think, earlier at the beginning of the show. Awesome. So let's continue our googly journey then. So you guys have shared some of your favorite ways that you like to get googly at school, and we know that employers are looking for these skills. So now how do we take that all together, and how do we get creative with our G Suite for Education toolkit? So here we're going to be taking a look at back to school, and we want to take a look at the lesson. And so it would be easy to unpack it app by app, but what would be a really important thing to do would be to unpack it by lesson design. So a little bit of that backwards by design approach. And so it's a little bit of a choose your own adventure story, just like in the last summit. And so you can click on different sections to go to different parts of the Google slide deck. The first one after that, though, is the 5 senses of success. So would really love to see you guys. Feel free. You can actually choose icons, or you can grab a text box and you can type on the board. Would really love to see your ideas of how we can incorporate the 5 senses when we think about which apps that we would like to use to help our students. So to start with, a nice little hint would be what Katie just shared on the Jamboard with Google Earth, and that whole sense of sight and how it inspires engagement that way. So please feel free, go ahead and drop your ideas on the whiteboard that I've dropped inside the Google slide deck, and just think about what are some different ways that we could actually use our senses to inspire creativity across the G Suite for Education app. So I'll give you guys a few minutes to interact with that. You do all have edit access, so feel free. You can take these app icons on the bottom and you can move those around. To start with, one of my favorite ones, as you know, is Jamboard. And so one of the favorite activities that I love to do with my kids when we do a check-in is to say, hey, what did everybody have for breakfast? And they can go and grab images. And we're not actually always able to taste food, right? Obviously, if we're in a virtual environment, and sometimes based on food allergies or safety in the classroom, we can't always eat at school in the classroom while we're learning as well. But what we can do is we can invoke and use and harness the power of images to connect with that sense. And so asking during lockdown when we were remote, doing that activity with my students, what did you guys have for breakfast? What are you going to be helping your parents cook for dinner this evening? A lot of my secondary students were really excited to take cooking adventures. So this is great. And I see a lot of people starting to type on the board. So this is awesome. Stimulating images using Google Drawings, awesome. And always try to be thinking too about that creation piece, right, guys? So not only do we always provide the content as educators, but that we're making sure that we're posing the thought-provoking, open-ended questions that inspire our students to create using these tools. So I love that Google Drawing idea. Thank you very much for sharing. And might be Katie on the bottom saying use My Maps to encourage students to get outside safely, enabling sight, smell, touch, and sound to play a part of their learning. I love that. And so thinking about routines, thinking about safety, especially right now with the current situation. And again, that will be different depending on where you're located around the world, but absolutely very important ideas here. So what we want to do is we want to think about how can we evoke and inspire the 5 senses with a digital virtual platform. So that's awesome. And please feel free to continue adding to this board. We will leave it open as edit access until the end of today's summit, the end of the day. And so feel free to continue adding in there. All right, so now let's go ahead and take a look. We'll come back to share more ideas there. Let's take a look now at the back to school, so some other ideas. So I've supported with some resources, some that I've made, some that I've borrowed, because the other great thing about Google is sharing is caring. And there are just so many communities out there that are harnessing the power of G Suite for Education and sharing free tools and resources for educators and school communities. So let's take a look at social emotional learning. And just some key points to keep in mind, guys. when we go back to school, we must reconnect with our students. It really depends on your school and, how you left things. But most of us were still in lockdown when we closed for the summer and didn't have the chance to actually see and meet our students. And so when we're meeting them again, that could possibly be virtual or in person. We want to make sure that we take time to do activities that focus on well-being and wellness and reconnection. And so Jamboard, as we've already discussed, is a great way to do that. I've linked in here a recent article from Ditch That Textbook, and Chris, I never pronounced the last name correct, sorry, Chris Zangner has created some templates here for Jamboard. So there's some Guess Who templates in there. There's Four Corners, there's Sketch Stop. And so you're able to scroll down. There he is, so you can connect with him on social media. Thank you for the lovely templates. He's also linked in here the G Suite for Education Teacher Center and how we can get started with Jamboard. And look at these, Two Truths and a Fib. So what a great way to kickstart with your students, get them to know each other. So you could be in higher ed or secondary or primary school, especially in international settings. How can you actually get to know students if you're not in the room and you can't actually talk, or maybe you have bigger class sizes virtually and so it's not always possible to give that space for people to interact. So there's some great ideas in here. Here's an awesome Guess Who, again using images, using the draw tool on the Jam deck to give hints about who it is, but not actually revealing your name until people have guessed. I actually played this last time, but not Guess Who. It was Guess Which Work. And so students had screenshotted their creative work and placed it on a Jam deck. And then the other students in the class had to try and guess whose work it was. So the Guess Who is really popular across the curriculum. Thumbs up or down. Again, how are you feeling? So fist to 5, this is super awesome for well-being check-ins. You could also do really awesome things, guys, with emojis. So I've seen some amazing Google slides as well, split in half with smiley faces around, and students can just copy and then drag and drop emojis into their check-ins in the morning. So a great way there. There's that Four Corners one I was talking about, and the Stop Sketch. So on a clock, creativity on a clock, you give students like 15, 20 seconds and you call out a noun, for example, and they have to sketch it. Any type of retrieval practice for curriculum, but can also be used for social, emotional, back to school and reconnection. All right, so there's some Jam ideas for you. There's also Google Drawing, so some 25 free templates from Matt Miller as well there from Ditch That Textbook. So some great opportunities there. Guys, those check-ins are really important. I do want to say I can't stress enough to make sure that they happen daily. Every lesson if possible, and even a checkout. I didn't type it in there, but you could also do a checkout. How's everybody feeling at the end of the day? If students aren't connecting with you synchronously, take the time to send them an email, ask them how they're feeling, try and meet up with them in Google Meet if you can. So basically the way the slides work is I just drag the apps up that you could possibly think about using for these different activities. Google Classroom, we also did things where we posed questions in the morning, but the students pose questions. So you can ask your students to take turns and have like a rota, and each student can, so one student dropped like a quiz in there. One student dropped a this or that. What is your favorite playlist that you like to listen to? And so any type of question that is engaging the students, but you're empowering the learners to make those creations. So really, really important to give them that opportunity. Google Groups is up there as well. So I know that was mentioned earlier in the summit as well, but great opportunities for students to connect and be able to chat together while the educator and possibly any other members of leadership are also able to connect and support in there as well. And if there's any questions, let me know. Again, basic G Suite for Education features, but how can we use them creatively to connect, to create, and to share together? The next one is explore. So when we're exploring content, how could we do that? So creating collaborative spaces in Google Drive would be really awesome. This is a screenshot of something I do with my GEGs where we embed, but can also be used for things like carousels or book studies. If you're going to be using breakout rooms in Google Meet, you could actually embed the link for different breakout rooms inside a deck like this. And actually, it's what we used for our Bitmoji classroom, which I chose to stick in my create section because, as you'll see from the template that I've embedded in there, students and educators, depending on your role, can also create with you as they go. But this was also a great way that we were able to use breakout rooms. We embedded the link into the Bitmoji for the person who would be leading that breakout session. So it's a great way to explore content with your students or with your adult learners if you're an instructional coach. Some other ideas in there were hyperslides. So this is an example of a hyperslide. Obviously, you can click on things and it takes you to different places, but also allows you to create, like on slide 6, where you are all engaged and creating during the deck together. And then we have here Google Sites virtual field trips, which Katie's been sharing a lot about today. So thank you for that. And Global EDU Connect. We want to really remember that global citizenship and how can we connect our students. I know, guys, that there are some schools and some districts who have certain privacy rules where students are not able to share out or get shared in. But if you have that opportunity, do check with your leadership. It is an amazing opportunity when you can actually connect with other students and other learners and other educators globally around the world to empathize, learn, be culturally responsive. There's just so many great things in there. And Google Groups is a great way to be able to do that in a safe environment within your schools. Google Sites is also another way you can do that as well. Moving on to the create slide then. So you will see that I have embedded some resources for you guys. So I won't go over them. Hopefully you can see from the visual images there that have the tools embedded what you're going to be able to get to. But what I did want to do was just let you know also, yeah, HyperDocs is embedded there, so you can get some templates there to create. Because remember, the HyperDoc is literally a Google Doc right there, guys, that app, Google Doc, right? But how can we use it to enable our students to create, right? To do all of the parts of the lesson design themselves, student-led, student-paced learning in a creative and fun way. I have seen some very creative HyperDocs for my students as well, so give them the opportunity to create for you. Gamification, I think, was mentioned by Sethi early. So make sure that you try to gamify your learning whenever you can. There's an example from Shake Up Learning with Casey Bell, who's got a template in there for a tic-tac-toe board. Also, Slides Mania just released some choice board learning as well. So you can get some free templates from her, slidesmania.com. This is one on the right that I created. You're welcome to take a copy of. I know Tanya shouted out the Noun Project, so I also pay for a yearly subscription because I really love the quality of the icon content in there. So this is actually an entire term's worth of projects. Each square represents a module that students can learn at their own pace. So everybody in the class was doing a different project at the same time. And then we had Google Meets where students could come and check in or get support. So we had some people coding in Unity, we had some people creating a newsroom, some people were doing a sketchbook unit, and it also makes for super interactive collaboration when we meet up and share, because then they're inspiring each other rather than always just the educator. So some really great ideas there for everybody. And we're almost out of time, but I wanted to let you guys know on the share slide, it's another idea about how we would empower students and which tools could we use to really allow them to share out. And so I wanted to give you guys a chance to do that. There's also some social media icons on the right-hand side. And so again, if your school is open, to using social media. And so I know that some students, especially in the secondary schools and above, do use those things, then you might be able to interact out. If you're not able to connect directly through those social media platforms, then students could actually use things like Google Slides to recreate things like the TikTok method, Instagram, right inside Google Slides to make it a safe space for them to create those experiences. So that's about the share slide. And then the last one is reflect. So at the end of the lesson, obviously, or unit or project-based learning, we want to make sure that we give students the opportunity to reflect. So I know Suan also mentioned Sylvia Duckworth earlier. There is another slide, a sketch from her explaining why sketchnoting is such an amazing retrieval practice that can be done on Google Drawings, for example. We also have examples of icon boardings. We talked about that with social emotional learning, where students could actually use emojis. So you can actually create icons around the outside of a Google slide, and you can have students create their own icon boards. Other ideas in there would be like creativity journals that you could create either like in a Google Doc or a Google site, for example, blogs, vlogs, and again, that connection to reflect and share out. So that brings me to the end of the presentation. Just some ideas, a few resources in there to share with you guys on how you might consider using the G Suite for Education tools creatively for back to school. And I see James is there. Hi, James.
Hey, Georgina. Wow, I'm exhausted. There's so many takeaways there. Good news is we're absolutely, just to remind everybody, we will chat to this video. So if you go back to YouTube, you'll be able to click through to Georgina's session. There'll be a direct link to it. And more importantly, all of your resources, well, the slide deck will be shared there as well. So everybody will have access to that. There's a huge amount that I'm sure people want to share with their teachers as well.
Thank you so much for having me. And guys, I know that it may seem like a lot, but let's be honest, G Suite for Education is jam-packed with googly goodness, right, guys? So there's always loads to unpack there. So it's just taking a little bit by little bit and taking what you know, what you're comfortable with, and building just like that. Thanks, James.
Georgina, thank you very much. And on behalf of everybody here at AppsEvents, good luck with your Innovator Academy. And we will check back in soon.
Thanks a lot, guys. Enjoy the rest of your summit.
Bye, Georgina. Hi, everyone. Just a quick reminder, you can join the giveaway for a free Play Today summit or a boot camp. Hopefully, some of these will be face-to-face later this year. Just go to this link, gsummit.link/Acer, to fill out the form for that. So I'll just leave that up for a second as I bring in Ivy Lee.
Hi, James.
Hi, Ivy. Welcome. Good evening. Where are you, Ivy, right now?
Good evening. I'm in Hong Kong right now.
Great. And what school are you at in Hong Kong?
I work at Stanford American School.
And there is quite a big tie in here because we have Tim Evans, who we saw before, and he'll be back later. And you obviously work with Tim. What do you do at Stanford American?
I'm currently a bilingual teacher for our grade 3 class. So I teach elementary, like general subjects in both Mandarin and English.
Brilliant. And actually, I'm just showing you a link. You actually have a YouTube channel. Do you want to mention that very quickly? I'm showing you.
Yes, I actually created during online learning. So I started to share a lot of edutech tips in Mandarin only because I feel like a lot of resources are in English out there, but I don't want the language to be the barrier for people who speak Mandarin. So I created this channel which is full of 1-minute videos about all the tools you can use for online learning.
Brilliant. And the 1 minute, of course, Tanya mentioned earlier about keeping it short. I think 1 minute is a great time to learn, to get a takeaway there. So for any Mandarin speakers out there, please check out the channel. And if you're not a Mandarin speaker, and maybe a good chance to learn. So Ivy, do you want to bring in your slides and introduce what you're going to be sharing with us today?
Yes, sure. Let me share my screen right now. So as a language teacher, I really feel like I'm looking for all the technology that can help students communicate themselves in their native language or in foreign language. So today I'm going to talk about Flipgrid, which I think is one of the greatest tools for students to get some communication going on among the class community as well as out to the public. So I really enjoy Flipgrid because you can do a lot of student-led activities there, and all the functions there are very intuitive. So even for our kindergarteners with some training, they can use the basic functions of it without any problem, which can be very useful. And it's also a great tool for teachers because you can have all the functions for you to make your own teaching videos there, and you can download the video or upload it anywhere else. So I'm gonna introduce the basic functions of it today.
Brilliant. Can't wait, Ivy. Good luck. Welcome to the channel, of course. First time with the AppsEvents Summit. Very excited and very gracious, very thankful to have you here, Ivy. Please go ahead.
Thank you, James. So I'm going to start. So these are the reasons I really enjoy Flipgrid. And we have been using it during our online learning in the spring semester as well. And we used it for many different community building activities I will talk about later. And one large benefit of it is it's free and it's very easy for teachers to manage. Students and teachers can all log in with their Google account and teachers can manage from there. So let's start. Once you create a Flipgrid, it looks like this on the website. So on the top, there's something called a topic. This is where teachers can record a mini lesson or record some instructions and a model for the students. And for the bottom part are the responses. Teachers and students can record the responses there easily. So when you tap the green plus sign, students can start recording. And here are a lot of buttons out there, and I labeled it in my presentation here. You can see it has a filter. My young kids really love it to change their faces and background. Also, there's a text button where they can type. There's also this emoji, which I think is very useful for back to school. As Georgina just mentioned before, we want to check in with the students very often. And here are tons of emojis students can use to add to their videos when they want to present or share their feelings. And many of my students love to use the emoji to block their face. Although we do want to see them, but keep in mind that at the beginning of the school year, many students may not feel comfortable yet to share their faces in all the videos all the time, right? So this is actually a great tool to build a community, to make them feel comfortable sharing little by little, using some fun tools here. And the three blue boxes here are my favorite as a language teacher. They are drawing, whiteboard, and image. So I'm going to switch back to Flipgrid. If I just tap the drawing button, I can just start writing on the screen. And what's cool about this tool is that you can either draw before you start anything, start your video, or you can record and draw at the same time. So for Chinese teachers, it's very helpful because we want to teach students about stroke orders, how to write Chinese characters. So when they record, they can write with their fingers on the iPad at the same time and show me the order of the strokes. So I can imagine this tool to be very helpful for math activities as well. Students can write and explain to me at the same time about their thinking. And remember, these tools can be used for teachers too. So when teachers are making your teaching video on Flipgrid, you can use these tools too to explain an equation or a problem to the students while you are talking. And I love it because everything is here. You just need to tap the buttons on the bottom. And whiteboard is very similar. You just block your face and change it to a whole whiteboard. And the last button over here is called a photo sticker. And this can be very useful at the beginning of the school year as well. If you want to, if you want the students to share something about their summer break, they can upload a photo from here. I'm just gonna choose a random photo I have. Show and tell. So for example, this one, and they can make it smaller or bigger and put it in their video. and talk about it at the same time. It can be a very quick check-in. It can also be used for a lot of language activities. Sometimes we ask students to take a photo of the book they're reading, and they can put the page there and read at the same time. So these 6 buttons covers most of the things we need for an oral presentation, and it's all there. It's very easy to use. And you can see here on the side and at the bottom, there are a few more buttons. I want to talk about the 2 on the right side first. The first one is called Show Topic. So remember, when you set up a page, the top part is the topic of this Flipgrid, which can be a mini lesson, can be the instructions, or an activity example, right? So when students record their response, and when they open the book here, the topic is right beside them. So they don't need to quit the video. They can just watch the instructions or watch the lesson again and again until they're ready. Then they can close the book and start recording themselves. I think it's very brilliant, and it's very helpful for language learners who want to listen to the teachers while preparing for their videos. So definitely, please introduce this tool to the students, and they know how to use it. And another one over here is sticky note, and it's very straightforward. When you tap it, there's a sticky note open up, and you can write your notes here while you are recording your video. And the sticky note will not appear in the video either. So these 2 tools can be very helpful when students need to present something or share their ideas. They can use these to remind them. And at the bottom, you can also see the 3 dots here. This is mainly for the teachers, I think. So when you need to create a video on Flipgrid and tap the 3 dots, you can add any existing video clip you have, and you can also do screen recording. This is a new function of Flipgrid, and I absolutely love it because usually when we record something, we need to switch back and forth into a lot of apps and then add the video and add the subtitles, etc. But with Flipgrid, everything is all here, and you can just use it with one website, right? And the only thing about Flipgrid is that they limit the video length to 10 minutes for now. I think it's really enough for younger students as a mini lesson or as some instructions, because you don't want to talk too much. But please be mindful of that. You only can record a video of 10 minutes here. To compensate that, when you make a topic, you actually can link to other resources outside as well. For example, now you can link to YouTube, Nearpod, Kahoot, etc. So here, it doesn't have to be a Flipgrid video of 10 minutes. It can be a longer one, which means you need to link it to YouTube. It can be also other presentations you've created to be linked here as well. So these are the basic tools of it. There's one extra thing I just discovered recently is this blue button. If it looks familiar to you, maybe you've used it in Microsoft. It's called Immersive Reader. So here I've typed some Mandarin introduction or instructions here. And what if students cannot read it, right? It's very hard for them to memorize all the characters and read the instructions plus do an activity on their own. So this button can help them. Once they tap it, it brings you to a new page where Flipgrid will read the instruction to you in that language automatically. So when I click play, it will read to you and highlight the words it's been reading. So this can be very, very helpful for language learners or English as a second language learners as well. So it's also a cool button to share with the students. So here are the things I've just gone through: the topic button, sticky note, and also the immersive reader things. So I give you another example here. Here is a Mandarin activity I did with my students, where I give them tons of keywords in Mandarin, right? Although we've learned it in class, but when they need to do it virtually online, they may need further assistance, and this immersive reader button can be very helpful to them. So during our online learning, we have been using Flipgrid in a lot of different ways. We've used it for school-wide events like Read Aloud Day or International Day, where we give students a topic and they just record their video there to share with the whole school community. We have also been doing grade-wide challenges, the grade 3 weekly challenge, where we give students a project, a hands-on project to do, and they can record videos to keep track of their progress and share with the grade level. I think this can be very helpful at the beginning of school year as well, because students may not know other people in their grade level. They can have live classes within their class, but it's harder to know other people across the grade. So if the grade level can collaborate and start some activities like that, it can help students to know each other better and also feel like they belong to the community, right? We have also used it for peer-to-peer feedback. So not only students can record their own video to present something, the people who watch, the audience, can also record a video to respond to the video. So in class, we normally do conferences where students can talk to each other face-to-face. Given that we may start the school year online, we can use Flipgrid to replace that instead. I have also tried something called a grid pulse, which means you can connect with another class or another school on Flipgrid, and the students can leave video messages to each other. I think it's very helpful for younger grades especially, because they might find it harder to write messages to each other. So at least in this way, they can see each other's faces and listen to each other. And it's a great way to connect with the broader community too. And last, just very quickly, it's very easy to manage. So if you haven't tried, definitely give it a try. When you create a grid, you can just share the link or the QR code with the students. You can add co-pilots on each grid, which means several teachers can be on the same grid and manage it together. And the last, you can also give private feedback to students on Flipgrid as well. If I zoom in a little bit, you can see here, you can record a video feedback, add your own rubric, and leave a message to the students there. And you can just send a link to the students privately so they can see your comment. So that's it for Flipgrid. I hope it's a helpful introduction for you to give it a try. And good luck with the new school year.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ivy. That was amazing. Really great feedback on the YouTube comments. And I really like the immersive reading feature. I haven't seen that before. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's pretty new. I'm very excited when I discovered that.
Great. Well, Ivy, thank you very much for joining the stream. Really great welcome. We'd love to have you back again. You enjoy the rest of the evening. You've earned a well-deserved rest.
Thank you, James.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Ivy. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, an amazing session from Ivy Lee just then. Very warm welcome for our next speaker, Ken Morrison. I'm just going to bring him into the stream. Evening, Ken.
Hello, hello. Hi, James. Hi, everyone.
Where are you now, Ken? Where are you based now?
I'm in Malaysia, in Johor Bahru, right across the river from Singapore.
Fantastic. And which school are you at now, Ken?
I'm at Raffles American School.
Brilliant. So you just moved there this year or last year?
This is my third year. This will begin the third year next week. Yes.
Brilliant. Because we met, of course, in Korea at Chadwick at the summit there. It's great to have you here speaking today. Absolutely. I know you're going to be talking about student agency. Quick intro to your session.
Absolutely. Yes. I'll be talking about some big picture kind of rough structures, more goals and tips on how to create the idea of an online environment for students during rough times like now, as well as things that'll go well when we get closer to normal someday.
Brilliant. So I'm just sharing Ken's Twitter ID at the bottom of the screen right now. Ken, if you want to bring your screen in, I'll bring it up. And so as Ken is getting prepared, just a quick reminder, after Ken, we have Kristen, who I'll introduce in a few moments, and Melanie, and then we will welcome Tim Evans to close out the session.
Excellent.
Okay, I'm bringing your screen in, Ken.
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
Great. And I can present now?
Great. All right. Go ahead, Ken.
Great.
Very much looking forward to this.
All right. Thank you, James. Hi there. Yes, my name's Ken Morrison. I'm technology integrationist and teacher at Raffles American School. So today we'll go kind of fast. I would love to continue to connect on Twitter. This might help. Ed is my Twitter handle, and I'd be glad to continue to connect as we move on. Big concept. How do our classrooms change now that some students have proven very much that they can be trusted to work independently? Some students have really shined and others have really, really tried when they quite honestly had a lot of freedom at home. How can we reward them by helping them come to the next step? That's my critical thinking question as we begin. We encourage students to journal. Some do, some don't. I encourage my students to take one step forward, and during the pandemic, we made podcasts. Most only needed to be 3 minutes, but they usually ended up being 5 minutes or longer, where they would reach out and communicate with someone in their house, someone they missed, a family member, an old friend from somewhere else in the world, and they would get edited their interview down to a soundbite, and then they would create a connection between those two interviewees to create some type of bridge, which was very, very good skill for the students. We're talking high school mostly, but these can be scaled down as well. This was a high stakes project. The students not only made their opinions global on YouTube, but this is a project that I got the most feedback after 10 years of working with students in Asia. Is these students, after seeing their teachers work hard, have great days, have days where they struggled, as well as the students, they created a 7-minute video giving very authentic feedback for their teachers, thanking them for a great attempt and many good classes, but also giving feedback in case we needed to do online learning again. So that's on YouTube, and I'd be glad to share that later if anybody asks. And I got so much great feedback and just sincere thanks and continued conversations from my peers after they saw that video from the students' points of view. I had another group of students. There's only 3 students in this small class, and they were all new to school, which is why we created this class actually, and they didn't fit into the other classes yet. But they saw that many of their friends liked their teachers, but weren't very good with small talk, didn't know how to start and endure conversations. So we learned how to use the Glide program, which ties in very well with Google Sheets. And we made an app. They did app development where they reached out and contacted almost every school teacher in our school. They found out hobbies, advice for young people, things that these teachers like to talk about. And we made a pseudo app with the help of Glide, and I believe it's very similar to Awesome Tables, which I have not used, and it just works really good. It looked like a real app, and it's just a great experience for the students. Many of my friends or teachers said they learned things about their other teachers that they didn't know, that they will continue that progress, or just to learn more about their peers. All of my grade 10 students have passion projects at some throughout the whole school year, and our most successful one student created a week-long random act of kindness. This was school-wide. She got student council to also join her. She had to have a one-on-one proposal meeting with our principal to get it on the calendar and to get support. Another grade 10 student worked with the grade 1 students to help them understand all about how and why plants grow and why it's healthy. 2 years in a row, my grade 10 students worked with their their coaches, health teachers, and the athletes to work with diet to be the most efficient athletes they can be. And they documented all of this in Google Sites. And some students don't know their passion yet, which is absolutely fine, but they're willing to work hard. So what I do is I use Google Sites for them to go through Google Applied Digital Skills. They're willing to work hard, but they just don't have a passion yet. So they can learn from the engineers of Google, and basically they have to document what they're learning and create a simplified version to help others have some idea of how to do the steps of what they learned during the hour, 2 hour, 3 hour course mini session. If you're like me, you might not know who Elizabeth Choi is. What a phenomenal life this woman has lived between Malaysia and Singapore. One of my students was a little bit frustrated that Wikipedia has very little information on Elizabeth Choi. So she did a great research project. It only needed to be about a 5-minute video, the Cultural Hero Project. It ended up being about 15 minutes. And they used Google Slides as an interactive, kind of digitally enhanced conversation starter. And they used it a little bit like Pear Deck. I have them kind of create manipulative so they can sit down with a tablet or a computer next to a friend, tell these stories in a way that teenagers might enjoy learning more. And it's really fun on that. I can share a video later as well. I strongly believe that we should simplify big tasks down to so silly that we feel silly to not, if we're not willing to take the next step. So in my slides, I also often tell students, your very next step is to do A, B, and C. We have a few goals today. One goal that I would say is to create a culture of 360-degree feedback between students. One simple way to do that is 2 stars and a wish. In Google Slides, make a slide for every student, and every student after the presentation or any project is shared, they have to share 2 things that the peer loved, 1 thing they would encourage to make it better. When I was younger, I wrote for my school newspaper. I remember my feedback from my peers so much. Another tip that I would suggest, try to create a classroom culture of very small storytelling. Really quickly, it's all about the prompt, giving them tools and time to share their ideas. It does not have to be book creative, but find some way for the students with voice, video, photos to share their ideas. Here's a prompt. Every student, every teacher in a school has some ideas. You just became school principal. What changes can I expect starting next Friday? Give the students some time to create, give them some small steps, and have fun with their ideas. Goal number 3, create a classroom culture of short student videos where they advocate for their resources, times, deadline extensions, etc. Open it up and give students that voice and that opportunity to advocate for themselves. A perfect example, have them advocate for who their teammates should be. And it can't just be, hey, we're good friends, or hey, we've gotten an A in the past. Have them tell you very clearly why their skills work well with other teammates and what skills they are looking for that they want to learn from their peers. So a simple, silly next step is to have students make a short video to advocate for themselves for their next team project. Tip 4, create a classroom culture of students knowing the learning standard and the learning task as an entrance ticket. My students, most of my class, know this before they sit down. They should be able to, they have to read the classroom learning standard for the day and the learning task, and they should be able to repeat it. For about the last year, after reading a book that Bill Gates suggested to many teachers, one teacher in this book suggests that, or she talks about how in some schools, in one school, all the students have to get a small relief for any lab time. I started doing that at a smaller scale, and it's working really, really well. Students don't get excited for things that the teachers aren't excited for. As you see behind this character man is the learning objectives, etc. But I don't simply go to Google Classroom and drop a link and say, here's our next Google meet me at 10 o'clock. I try to create a 2 or 3 sentence sales pitch, and I let students know, if you give me your best effort for 55 minutes, these are the 2 skills you're gonna learn and how it applies to our bigger goals as a class. So I highly encourage you to start communicating through Google Classroom as to help students get excited for the next learning task. A goal number 5 is to create a classroom culture of short student videos, and so that you can, where they are documenting their progress. Of course, our students have to get to the learning objectives, their learning goals, it is a responsibility to get them there. But on some weeks, I let my students know that as long as they can communicate that they know the goal and they can document the process of what they're trying to do to get there, that they can still get a good grade for that weekly task. If they can document their task, tell me what's working well, what they tried that did not work well, what they learned from overcoming, and what that aha moment was. And it can be anywhere from 90 seconds to 3 minutes to longer for higher students. We have our online learning platform. This one is CodeHS, and they tell me the dashboard, but then they go deeper in and they'll decipher the code a little bit and tell me what was hard for them and how they overcame their challenge. And sometimes they tell me that they learned from a quiet student that you don't even know that they're collaborating with. And it's just really good for the students to be able to document what's going well and what they need help with next. So I don't know, maybe 5 times in a term, students can do great on the weekly task, even if they don't meet the task, if they can document their progress. Step 6, this is a big one. Think of Google Slides not as a presentation tool, but as an online interactive digital workbook. Not a worksheet, but a workbook. A simple, silly next step for you might be take slides that are working well as lecture style, inject at some kind of shifting points, inject some reflection slides. Put it in Google Classroom, share the slides, have every student make a copy, have it force a copy, and have students tell you in a few sentences what they learned before they move on. It can get more complex. In yesterday's PD for our school, some of our demographics had to use to reach some of our students in China. We are going to use an additional platform on top of the ones that we already used. Time is tight, and so I broke it down into 9 mini learning objectives, and what every one of these black boxes is a short mini objective. If some teachers or students just simply want to read the steps, that's right here. If they're more visual and they want to see the steps as screenshots, that's great. If they want to hear me explain it, that is absolutely an option as well. I'll make a short video, and then I encourage you with that big green ugly box, that is where they can restate in their own words what they learned. I encourage you with your first steps of creating interactive digital learning spaces with slides, etc. Help students know what is a bare minimum that they must know to get to the next step. What are some things that are nice to know? These can be interactive buttons that take to alternative slides. Help them clarify what their goal is before they go into the steps where they're working on their progress towards the learning objective and documenting their progress. I'd be happy to share any tips after the session on how that can work for you. I've done this for about 2 years. I stopped making lectures, but I wasn't quite ready for videos, flip videos at first. I started making these interactive digital structured digital workspaces within Google Slides and others. And what I learned was some great students thought they were doing great. They were working hard, putting in time, but they would miss some steps. So what I started doing is this ugly green that always symbolizes that some action is needed somewhere on that screen. Sometimes I just want them to do some thinking before they move on to the next step. And sometimes I can help them save time or catch something very precise with this big orange notice. And again, some information might just be nice to know, but these are some structures within Google Slides. This allows them to learn at their own pace, to go backwards if they miss something. And I can learn from the reflection questions, their video, if I have them add audio, links, etc. So basically all of these things are steps that I can go just a bit beyond the voice and the choice. And the big goal is how might we create some rails to empower students to always make progress and to track their progress. Rubrics are a great start, but these are some extra steps. So big question, how would your school be different if every teacher in your school knew every one of your students' passion projects and goals? Passion projects, I highly encourage you to find some way to integrate and to make public what the students' goals are, because then other teachers and other subjects start looking for connections between their learning objectives and what that student's goals are. So that is what I would like to share with you. I would love to continue communicating on on Twitter, etc., and to help you if you're interested in learning more, or if you've gone to the next step and you want to give me some guidance. I would love that.
Ken, thank you very much. That was awesome. There's a huge amount of tips and info and stuff to take away there. I've put your Twitter handle at the bottom. Maybe we can share your slides a little bit later as well. I'll put the link into the YouTube feed that we've just been running. I just want to pick up your final point there about passion projects. Make sure, where can schools change, learn about the passion projects. I'm curious to know, how do you do that? How does your school do that? Do you have any ideas about sharing that with the school community?
Sure. For grade 10, we do it all within Google Sites, and some of it is online, and some of it, like the Week of Kindness Week, it starts online with digital tools, and we have many teachers ready to support the students at any point. At the end of the year, my students, they do need to make their website public for about 3 weeks, and then after that, they can make a choice. But they're documenting their progress throughout the whole year.
Brilliant. And are they all shared with all staff, all faculty in the school?
Yes, all staff. Depending on your time, I'll give you a quick version. At around October during a regular school year, every student has to make their elevator pitch of why they want to propose time to work on their passion project. That one slide within Google Slide, we publish that as a website, so it's very simple. I share that with the whole staff. And as you know, you can create that as a link that just continues to go. Last year, we put that in the cafeteria so everyone can see a student photo and what their goal for the year was for a passion project. And it can be on a continuous link.
Thank you, Ken. I'm just showing Tim Evans' comment. Obviously, you're passionate about this, Ken, which students for sure will feed off. Great job. Absolutely. And actually, Ken, I'd love to bring you back, just talk about that in a little bit more depth about these passion projects.
I would enjoy that.
Ken, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure hosting you, Ken. Thank you so much.
I'll see you again. Thanks, everyone.
See you again, Ken.
Bye.
Well, once again, thank you very much to Ken for sharing that. It was a fantastic session. Just before we get on to our next presenter, Kristen, I just want to share a little message from a sponsor. AE Learning Lab is one of our sponsors, actually, one of our sister organization. AE Learning Lab provides ISTE training in Europe, the Middle East, and California. If you're interested about becoming ISTE certified, please just go to aelearninglab.com. There's an information form there to fill out. Please go ahead and have a look at that. So aelearninglab.com for all of your ISTE certifications. And very, very excited to welcome Kristen Struble to the stream. I'm going to bring her in now. Hi, Kristen.
Hi, James.
Good evening. Kristen, where are you now?
Hong Kong.
And this is great because obviously we got Tim, of course, and we saw Ivy before and yourself. And you're at which school is it, Kristen?
Stanford American.
Stanford American.
All
Welcome.
same place. One big family.
Amazing teachers at this school. Great to welcome you here. Now, I'm really excited for your session, Alternative Uses for Sheets. I'm going to let you into a little secret. I have 2 teenagers. I use Google Sheets to put all of their daily tasks during the summer on. I have to tick them off. I feel sorry for them. Like Not a big fan, but I'm sure what you're going to share is going to be far more exciting than that. So, Kristen, would you like just to quickly introduce what your session is going to talk about?
Sure. So I think there's 1,000,001 different ways you can talk about Google things and things you can do with them. And I know people love slides and forms and docs, but we kind of forget about Sheets, or we think of it as, oh, I had to learn that back in high school, and some formulas and it just seems so overwhelming. But it is part of the Google powerhouse, and there is a lot you can do with it that is very interactive with your students, and things that are easy to teach them to do that will help them create things on their own. So I just wanted to explore some of those things we did during online learning, things I do for myself that help me stay organized, keep things good and ready to go, and just kind of share that Sheets isn't just let me put all my data in here and store my grade book. It can be other things too and used with your kids.
Brilliant. I'm very excited to see this, Kristen. Do you want to share your screen and I'll bring that in?
Yes.
So just as Kristen's bringing her screen up, quick reminder, we have Melanie Cherry after Kristen, and then we're going to be welcoming Tim Evans back as well for the final 2 sessions. So lots more yet to come. Going to bring in Kristen's screen right now. Okay, you got your screen up, Kristen?
Fabulous. So this presentation, you can get it at the bit.ly. And for you guys, it's a storehouse of, I created a bunch of different examples of interactive sheets, and you can click them, make copies, edit to your heart's content. But we're just going to go through 3 big things about why sheets in this format. So my big thing with sheets is conditional formatting. And if you know how to add conditional formatting, you can do all kinds of things that allow your students to have their creativity. Yes, their checklists, like James uses with his kids, but it can also be used to allow them to auto-check answers. And if you teach them how to do that, then they can create flashcards for themselves, and they can practice and review, or go back and go through their multiplication facts 80 million times until they actually have them memorized. So there's so much you can do just through conditional formatting, and it's one menu, the same clicks over and over and over again. And so it's really easy to learn, really easy to pick up, and has just as many applications as you want it to. So first thing, wrong button. One of the really fun things that you can do with conditional formatting is create a template like what you see here that allows students to create some pixel art. Now, I know we're all talking about beginning of the year, and this would be a great way for your students to be able to share what they did this summer, what their favorite thing to eat is, how they're feeling. It's something that you can set up as a 5-minute break. Go make something because you're a little stressed and overwhelmed right now, and you just need to like relax. And if you teach them how to use it and create it, they can change the colors. So if they want an entirely blue palette, they can have an entirely blue palette. Or if you want them to draw out what they're struggling with, and I say struggling in quotes because it's not a struggle, they're just not confident yet. So there's so many things you can do from that social emotional perspective of the pixel art, but then you can also apply it to academic things as well. They can draw and label things. It can be used for math with modeling area and perimeter, make simple graphs. They can draw a scene from a book, what a character looks like. And from their side, if you have the color scheme set up, all they have to do is put a number in the box. So if we take a look at this template a little bit closer, you'll see any box I click in, if I type an 8, it automatically changes that to be orange, or it should. If I put a 2, it automatically changes it to red. So what happened here is I forgot to add the orange color to my conditional formatting. So if I come up here to format, drop down to conditional, you can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I forgot 7 and 8. It's really easy. I add another rule. This is always going to be your automatic when you're conditional formatting is cells not empty, it turns it green. You can change this to be anything from this list. If it is empty, it's a color. If it's looking for a specific phrase, if it ends with a certain phrase, if it's exactly something in text. And this is cool because it doesn't matter if it's capitalized or lowercase. As long as they spell the word correctly, it gets it. So you don't have to worry about some of those things like with forms where they have to have the capital letters in the right place, or it's all lowercase. It just looks for the letters, whatever case they're in. It can be a date, whatever you want it to be, greater than, less than. For this one, you just say the number is equal to, all right, my number is equal to 7. And then I'm going to change my font choices. And because I want it to be a solid color, I'm going to change the text to be blue is 7, and then the fill, blue is 7, and then it's that nice solid color. And now you can see here's all the formatting in that cell. And I add another one, again, is equal to 8. And this time I'm changing the font and the fill to be orange. And you can see it automatically updated over here, so I know I did it correctly. One thing though, you'll notice here, these ones go from A1 to A050, so that's this whole part that's blocked in. But what I just did doesn't. So there are a few ways I can change that. If I click back into this, I can edit it. If I tap this square, I can literally just drag across my screen and make it to fill the amount I want it to be. I click OK, it saves it, it changes it. The other thing that's really cool about conditional formatting is if you forget and you just copy and paste it, it pastes the formatting as well. So I'm just going to delete the 8 for now. If I copy this and I paste it up here into this one, you'll see now this cell also has values equal to 8 as a possibility. I'm just going to change this to be all of it now. And you can see it has specific cells. So if you want specific cells to react in a certain way, it doesn't have to be the full range. You can add individual bits and pieces. My 8 simple colors, get creative. You can give them an entirely blue one. You can give them a green one. You can teach them how to change the colors in it themselves. And they can make art. I mean, I'm not the best artist, so we have my examples of a rainbow. And my go-to, I know how to draw a barn, but it's just pixel art. So they can do it whenever they want to. It can be their break. It can be related to some sort of beginning of the year team building, but it just is a different way to use it. It's all hard coded into the sheet without it being hard to code, because you're not having to sit there and like fiddle with formulas, because we all know that's why people hate sheets, is it seems like so many formulas. And then if they draw something they like, and I'm just gonna random numbers here, and let's say I'm a really big fan of this amazing abstract art, and I want to save it forever and ever. I go to the drop-down arrow here, I duplicate it. It makes a copy so I can rename it, you know, put the date on it, and then I can come back to my original. I just delete what's ever in the cells and I can start over again, because it's tied to the formatting of the cells and it looks for what's inside the cell. But in deleting what's in the cell, you don't do anything with these conditional format rules over here. So you can reuse this again and again and again and again. You can have a 2 here, decide you don't like that color, go back, make it an 8. And you can have as many colors as you want to. So get creative with it. There's really no limit to what you can do. I would say don't let them go crazy and have 100 different colors, because they're not going to be able to keep track of it. But it's engaging for them. They can create with it. They can tell stories with it and make it their own. And it's a really, really cool thing to use, especially for the beginning of the year, building connections, getting them interested in a new tool, because Sheets is going to be new for a lot of them. And it's simple for you to build. So that's pixel art. That's idea number 1. Idea number 2 is those checklists James mentioned. And I like making my checklist so it actually checks it off and crosses it out when it's done. And sometimes I even make it so that, you know, it's colored and it matches to something else on the screen where I want them to do something. And then once it's done, it takes away that color. And again, it's down to that same basics of you go to conditional formatting. So for this one, first thing, highlight the cells you want the checkbox in. Insert, checkbox. And then in this cell next to it, type whatever you want it to be. If you want to make it your to-do list for today, give presentation, go to sleep, whatever it is you're doing. And when you're done, because it's really satisfying to have it cross off, for your formatting this time, again, format, conditional formatting. This time you're going to go down to custom formula is. And all you have to do is type equals and A1. So it's equal to A1. And when it's done, I can have it, maybe I'm going to make it turn to white so I can't see it anymore. So it'll be white fill with white letters. And then as soon as I check this, it disappears from my list. Or I can have it go from, I can keep it black, but now it's got a strike through. So I check it, it's marked off my list. And if this was previously a filled color, so it was red, when I check it off, it honors whatever I have in the conditional formatting rules. So it'll change it to be a white fill and a strike through, so it gets rid of that bright color of here's what you're seeing, here's what you need to do. And so yes, it's a checklist, but it's also one of those things that if you can teach your students how to do this, they can make their own checklists. And some kids love it. They like knowing I have to do this and this and this and this. They like that ability to say, I finished this, it crosses it off for them. Because it's a Google Sheet, you can share it through Classroom and everybody can make their own copies. So you can give them the checklist of things to do for that day. As they do it, tick, 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 mark it off, done. When we're talking about some of those ideas I had for SEL, they can be their learning targets and their goals for, did I realize I was getting frustrated today and go take a break? It can be their list of calm down strategies that they use over and over again when they need to. So it can be, I know anytime I have to solve a problem, I forget what to do. So I just have a permanent, I can pull up my iPad, tick, 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 tick. Great, I've solved my problems. So there are the academic uses of it. You can give them directions embedded in a sheet. You can give them their to-do list. It can be the reminder of the class routines, or you can approach it from that more SEL perspective of helping the students self-monitor, manage themselves. And I mean, who doesn't like clicking something and watching it get marked off and change colors? So it kind of gets rid of all those sticky notes I keep everywhere and piles, and they're gone. And then the third thing I wanted to show you is that you can use Sheets and the conditional formatting to auto check the answers. So if they get it right, it changes to a different color and they know it's right. Or if they get it wrong, it stays the same and they know it's wrong. This could be something where, again, you teach the students how to do this. They can create their own flashcards. So they're writing up, here are the definitions, here's the word that goes with it. They do the conditional formatting and then they delete it all and they practice over and over again until they get it. For some of the lower elementary kids, you can do this as like they're spelling words or pattern sorts, or if they're recognizing this word fits into this category and they get it into the correct column, they get it marked as correct. They can make their own quizzes and give it to other people to test and try out. So for this one, I'm actually going to show it to you in some of these sample forms that I've created for you, because otherwise I would just be making up random questions and answers. So we're going to look at some of my samples so that you can see how the auto check works. All right, so first we have math. And we've got two examples for you for math, and they both have many tabs down at the bottom that you can go through. So this is just practicing identifying different parts of the fraction, where if they click into the box and get it correct, it changes and matches the color on the one to the left. So if I put in 1/2 here, you can see it changes and now the colors match and I know I got it correct. Now for fractions, you're going to have some of those kids that think that it's 2 out of 2 and they try it and it's not marked as correct. So they can see, not quite right, I need to try again. Oh, it's this piece of the whole, so it's 1 out of 2. And yes, it's going to think it's a date, but it doesn't matter. And you can keep going through the whole thing. Or up the challenge a little bit, they don't have a starting place, they just have to know what it is. And so with both of these, if you go in and make the copy so you can see it, you can look at my conditional formatting. In these two cells, it's looking for it to be 1, whatever date it decides what it is. I don't know if that's US form or European order, but so they can go through, it's formatted to match everything, and it automatically tells them they got it correct. And then they can do some practice because you can fill in boxes with colors for like this one. Here's 4 that are this peach color, so you would put a 4 here, count it up, how many out of the whole are each part. And then just to make it more fun, I added some pixel art down at the bottom so they can go through, they can make their own fractional piece. I did limit it purposefully to this much space, so hopefully they're not getting fractions out of 8,000, but if they wanted to, they could. So they can drop in the numbers just like they did on the last sheet and then represent the different pieces here. And same thing with addition, colors to represent different pieces, add it up, pixel art down at the bottom. Or you can just give it to them, figure out how to fill it in. If you wanted to, you could go through and code it in so that each one of these changes to the colors like I did. Or you can just teach them how to fill it with the wheel. But they can go through, they can get creative with their math, with their pixel art, and practice it that way. And like with these ones, it's automatically checking their answers. And then of course, multiplication tables repeated 1,001 times. Practice makes perfect. They'll get there eventually. All I did for this is I did 1 through 10, and then I randomly copied and pasted across, because I told you before, if you do conditional formatting here and copy this cell to somewhere else, it pastes the conditional formatting as well. So this is just all the ones tables all the way up through, and then there's a bunch of mixed ones as well, that if they get it right, it changes it to be green. They know they got it correct. And then when they're done, they've gotten them all correct, they can just delete what's in that and try again. So it's self-checking, it's really easy for them. Or if you want to make it harder on them make it themselves, make it self-checking and practice with it. So those are 2 math examples. And then a science example. Here I have the same graph data, but it's presented to you in 3 different ways, so you can think about different applications for it. So in this first one, we just have this data is automatically creating the graph, but it's missing some of the things. So you can see down here, this is coded yellow. They know they have to put 25 into this. And when they do, they see that it finishes out the line over here. So this is a really great way to start teaching them how to create graphs. We've already put in all the settings for the graph for them, but they're realizing if I put things in here, it can change it. I could make this. And then that's probably not the correct graph it should be, because they can see it does really strange things. Or you can make it a little bit more interesting and they get the full graph, and here's my checklist for them. And then there's missing values and they have to read the graph and put them in. And if they get it correct, this is self-checking. So if they read this and they're like, oh, January's 5. No, it's not, because it didn't change to the colors. And they try again and they realize, oh, January 16. Okay, I got it correct. And then I can come over here and I can say, yep, I did that one, and move on. And then again, same thing, make it 1 step harder. It's interpreting it, comparing, writing down their data. Some of these I've already filled in with correct or incorrect answers, and just going through. Now for this one, I wanted to show you, because it says 1 month where the rainfall is above 300, but there's more than 1 month. So if you look in here, under the formatting, you can see I just put in 3 different conditionals. So if they type July, if they type June, if they type August, they're correct. And you could add as many rules as you wanted to. Just, limit your questions so you don't have to do a ton, because it helps you keep track a little bit better. And so you can see there's lots of different ways to use that self-checking, to use those conditional formattings, to combine things together. And then we've got a literacy checklist, just straight up, did you check your writing? And if they turn it in and they say they did all of this, you're like, great, I can go ahead and grade it. And if they didn't, well, you can tell them to try again and uncheck for them. Or like for spelling pattern sorts, this one took slightly longer because I had to, screenshot the images and upload them all 1 by 1. But again, I did the same conditional formatting. You can see when this is checked, then the background turns black. Because they're not transparent images, it kind of puts black around the box instead of covering it up, but they can see that. And again, it's self-checking. So if they try and type cake into here, it doesn't work, but if they do it here, it gets marked correct, and it can go in whatever order they want it to. So if they really wanted to, they could put cake anywhere down this list, and it would be marking it as correct wherever in the list it is. So you've got 3 examples of that to play around with based on how you're sorting and the types of words you're using. So the goal of this was just give you some ideas. Like I said, everything Google, there's a billion different things you could do. And Sheets is just one of those that I think gets ignored. But when you start looking at things like the conditional formatting, there really are so many different things that you can do with it. And it can really do a lot to help you help your students, especially when you start telling them immediately, yes, you got this one correct. Because especially in that online setting where they're not face-to-face and they can't ask you immediately, it's giving it to them. Yes, you're right. Great job. And then the last thing, we don't really have time to go through it, but you can watch this GIF as many times as you want to. You can change the settings and protect parts of it. So if they try and edit it, they get this pop-up warning that tells them, stop, don't do that. So for things like if you were going to do the multiplication sheet, they're not accidentally going in and changing the originals and confusing themselves. So very quick overview of just some of the things you can do with conditional formatting in Sheets and make it interactive for you, for your students. Get them creating, because these are things that you could teach them to do on their own. And then you can be a little bit more creative as well.
Wow, Kristen, that was fantastic. That was awesome. I love Sheets, but that was amazing. In fact, the display of your different sheet tabs, your templates, one day you could turn that into a book for Sheets design. That was awesome.
I love Sheets too. Ask anybody on my team. I'm like, I made a sheet. They're like, of course you did. Like, but I made a sheet.
My kids are going to be very disappointed that my Sheets task list for them doesn't look like these. What I really wanted to mention, we always get a lot of questions. How do we implement G Suite for younger learners? I think we didn't mention this at the start, Kristen. What is your role at the school? Just a quick reminder.
Right. So I'm a grade 3 teacher.
And so this is amazing. So Sheets, obviously, with your grade 3 students.
Yep.
Loads of great ideas. Teachers are always asking for younger learners, what can they do?
Yeah, this graph, this page we did with them exactly as you see it here. Yeah.
Fantastic. We'll make sure that this is all shared out in the description, Kristen. Really great session. Amazing feedback on the comments as well. Everybody, make sure you follow Kristen at your Twitter handles at the bottom, at Miss K Struble at the bottom of the screen just here. Kristen, thank you very much for sharing. Really, really enjoyed that session.
I'm glad it made sense. I was worried it'd be too fast.
We'll love to welcome you back later because you got some great ideas there, Kristen.
Yeah, anytime.
Thank you so much. Go and enjoy your evening, Kristen. I know it's getting a little bit late in Hong Kong.
Bye-bye.
Okay, well, I'm very, very excited to also welcome somebody else from Hong Kong. In fact, a co-worker of Kristen just now, Melanie Cherry. I've just brought Melanie onto the screen. Melanie, you're from Hong Kong, obviously, and from, name the school.
Yes, Stanford American School. Yeah.
Once more, very strong team at Stanford American. Very excited because, again, you're going to be talking about working with younger learners. Do you want to introduce what you're going to be talking about?
Yes. So when we transition to virtual learning, it can be hard to keep all of those really important elements that we have in the classroom, like meeting for small groups, conferring, doing readers or writers workshop, and moving them online. So I've got a few ideas for moving that we do in the classroom every day to the virtual world.
Brilliant. And this is great because, again, as I mentioned before, teachers are always asking what to do with younger learners. I personally wouldn't know what to do with kindergarten up to grade 5 students in Google Meet. I am amazed at what teachers can do with those grade levels. I'm very excited to hear what you have to share today. Melanie, do you want to bring your screen in and I will bring it up?
Sure. Yep.
So as Melanie's bringing her screen in, we're going to hear from Melanie for about 15 minutes, and then we'll have Tim Evans closing us out, talking about app prototyping with Google Slides. Okay, your screen's just loading. Okay, we've got your screen up, Melanie.
Okay. All right. So small groups are like the bread and butter of our reading and writing workshops. And one of the biggest challenges for me when we go online is figuring out how to continue them. What do we do? And we could just teach whole group lessons and everyone does the same thing, but as teachers, we know that that's not the most beneficial or the most meaningful way to go about it. So using Google Meet, we can meet with 4 small groups and really integrate those pieces of small group learning. So let's take a look. My background is in bringing neuroscience and education together. So I want to put in a little bit about neuroscience here to just get some background on why we're doing these small groups and why it's so important. So it creates these deeper connections in our brains. So when we practice all of these skills in our small groups where we as teachers are coaching, we can get those deeper learning connections. Which creates what I like to call sticky learning. You know, it really sticks in there rather than just from the whole group lesson, one and done. We really get a chance to go into these small groups and stick that learning in there. It also brings in some scaffolding, which is really important during virtual learning and also really hard to do, all of that differentiation and the scaffolding to get the ZPD in the right place for each student. The brain doesn't learn very well under fear, anxiety, stress, or threat. And so when kids are stressed online, maybe the whole group lesson isn't reaching them, they're not really sure what to do, these small groups can come in and really be helpful there. And then, of course, brain efficiency. We're always looking for fast tracking those neural networks and figuring out how to get the automaticity in and getting our brains going and making those neural connections. So brain efficiency, the more we do it, the more we practice, the better we get. So let's dive into the reading outline and how Meet kind of falls into that. So a lot of times in our classrooms, we have kind of this similar overview with a focused lesson or a mini lesson. Then kids go off and do independent work, which is the bread and butter of our workshop where all that brain stuff happens. We come back, we do a focused lesson, then they do more independent work, and then we do a share time. But that's all well and good when we're in the classroom. But how do we do that on Meet, where we're going off and coming together and going off and meeting in small groups? And this was the challenge for me to figure out what works best, especially with K-5, because that's a lot of different links, that's a lot of different ways to join a meeting, leave a meeting, and it can all get very complicated. So looking at how can we utilize that independent work time for our small groups is where we're going. So this is an example of a reading group setup that I would give my students. I would put my students' names in these boxes so they would know who is in each group. And you can see that each box is set up with a Meet code. So this code would stay the same and kids would know when to come to their reading group. We would start maybe a whole group lesson, for example, at 9 a.m. and all come together on either the class Meet link in Google Classroom or using the Meet code, say reading. And then we would have our whole group mini lesson, 10 minutes, and then break up into our groups. So we have maybe the blue group is meeting, it's a Tuesday. So from 9:15 to 9:25, the blue group would come into Google Meet and we could do our small group time. So looking at these small groups on Google Meet, we can make them strategy-based, just like we would in the classroom, looking at different strategies that students need to work on. We can make it guided reading, where everyone's reading the same level text. We can make it skill-based, where we're looking at utilizing different skills across different levels. And we can also do a one-on-one conferring, depending on what the setup is with your individual school. And so that would be another place to put in these Meet codes. For example, when I am on Google Meet and I am sharing a book with students, or I am using different tools, I'm going to probably do it in a variety of ways. So I might do it with sharing my screen. Like in this example here, I am sharing a book that my students are all reading together. I might use a document camera to set up to do that. I can also use a PDF where I send it out to students beforehand so they all have it on their device. Or I can use digital libraries, say RazKids, Epic, Myon, whatever digital service you have for reading. So going back to these reading groups, when we're using them on Google Meet, it takes some background setting up with the kids. The first step is making sure that everyone knows how to set an alarm on their iPad. That's key, so everyone can keep track of all of these different meet times when we're popping on and off to different meetings. So setting up a recurring alarm is a really great step, even for the kindergartners, with some parent help, can set up those recurring alarms and all the way up to grade 5. So they repeat on whichever days they're doing small group, and making sure that they have that alarm. And then when they're entering in their meeting code, they're going to use whichever meet code you've set up for them and type it in here to the Google Meet screen. When they open it up, it'll say enter a meeting code. And then they'll get to this screen with a meeting code or a nickname. And so if your meeting code is blue, like the color blue, you're going to type in blue right there to join the meeting. And Google has made this so students cannot join unless the teacher is there with the meeting code. So it's really helpful. So kids aren't joining at random times or joining maybe to chat with their friends. So you have all of those things set up. Alarms for teachers are really helpful too, because then we can stay on track. Some tips with these small group codes is keeping them simple, consistent so they don't change, keeping the same code the whole time, and easily accessible on a document where everyone can see the code there. So like this document here, where everyone would see clearly the code is there. And this helps so parents know, kids know the times and the codes that they need. So when we're in the Google Meet and we can share our screens, if students are all reading different books, we're looking at different strategies, I can hear different students read and work on different skills that I need. It can seem a little bit complicated in the back end, setting it all up, but the kids are really adaptable, and once they get there and have it all set up, they really get into a routine where they can really do this very efficiently, and no one misses a meeting, and it's very rare that anything goes wrong with the Google Meet codes. So that was really quick on using these Google Meet codes. I'm going to check in and see if we have any questions. And let me see here. Yes, using the document camera is really handy with a phone. And yeah, that's a great one. Sometimes using the document camera would be a great session to have at a later time. That's something that I need to perfect my skills on, but there's lots of different options there. Yes, we have the unique Meet links that sometimes with Google Classroom, they can change or expire. And so when we switch to the codes, these don't expire and they last, which is handy because when you're generating the Meet link, it can change. And so that's really handy to just have a short link. Last year, one of my links was elephants, which was a little bit hard for my grade 2s to spell, but after a while, they all knew how to spell the word elephant. So, but I recommend keeping them short and sweet. So, let's see. Go back. And I really appreciate the opportunity to share with you guys about using the Google Meet, Google Meet to use this.
Yeah, this has been absolutely fantastic. I was just going to jump in there. Sethi had a good recommendation using your phone as a document camera. So you can actually get these stands, these tripods, where you can put your phone pointing down.
Yes, those are so helpful. I MacGyvered one with my flour jar and my iPad. So like my cylinder that I keep flour in with my iPad hanging off, but a stand is definitely better than that.
Melanie, please tweet out a picture of that later. I think everybody will want to see that.
Sure.
Melanie, thank you very much for sharing. I really love the simple design of how you get your students into groups and the color coding as well. So I see you've got your colors matching to your meet codes as well. Absolutely brilliant idea.
Yeah, it's very handy, especially for the younger kids to keep it all kind of streamlined.
A quick question. So presumably you have multiple groups of younger learners in different groups. Are you monitoring all of those groups at the same time, or how are you handling the management of the groups?
So we're not meeting quite at the same time. So in order to monitor them and meet individually, to really put in that coaching piece and to give them the strategy-based lessons, I have 10 to 15-minute groups set up. They're back-to-back. And then the rest of the kids have a job to do afterwards, or like during that time. So you say, off you go, and they can work on their independent work, say reading, practicing those skills from the whole group lesson, while I pull in, or I would actually go out to the next group and meet with them.
And very quickly, quick question about group size. What have you found to be an optimal group size for younger learners?
4. Which makes it tricky if you're looking at, like here in my example, I have 4 groups, and I know class sizes are bigger than that often. But if you can go, higher, and I've had 6 in my groups, but it makes it much more difficult to individually coach each kid with the different strategies.
Melanie, thank you so much. That's been awesome. And it's really, really good to hear from more teachers of younger learners, because I think the teachers of higher grade students, sort of grade 10 to 12, they have it a little bit easier when it comes to online meetings. I think it's really good to hear these strategies for the younger levels. Thank you so much, Melanie.
You're welcome.
Be sure for everybody, I'll just bring it up again. Melanie's, I know she's got it on her screen right there. So Melanie's Twitter handle is Brain Enthusiast. Looking forward to checking out all of your sharing on Twitter, Melanie.
Thank you.
All right, thanks so much, Melanie. Been a pleasure to have you here. We'll hope to welcome you back soon. Okay, so we're coming to the twilight session. Of course, we have Mr. Tim Evans shortly. I'm going to bring Tim in now. Hi, Tim.
Hi, James. How are you?
Welcome back. You bookends for this one, Tim.
How good was all that? I mean, how do I follow that now?
Amazing. What a team at Stanford American.
Well, we're so lucky. It was like the basic skills are already there. So for me, it was easy in a way, if I'm being honest, with what teachers are doing, just like Melanie was doing there with the groups, and Kristen with the slides, and Ivy was looking to use the tools more innovatively in different ways. So really pushing the boundaries then. Still the same tools. We're not using different tools. We're not using extra things. We're trying to keep it simple as well for parents and students. But then how can we really use, I mean, the sheets one with Kristen is a fine example. And I don't like sheets. But it was absolutely amazing. And it's good. It's recorded. I'm going to have to go back and watch it again, actually, a bit slower.
Absolutely. I'm going to go back and watch that Sheets again, because Kristen's Sheets design there was amazing. Brilliant. Well, Tim, without further ado, app prototyping using slides. I think we've missed up an S on our slide here. Slides it should be. Tim, quick intro. What's going on here?
So basically, just I just mentioned there, trying to use the tools that we have access to, but actually using them in different ways, innovative ways, to call it what you want these days, and actually get creative with it. And almost what we're trying to do with us at Stanford is give a brief introduction to a tool to a student, and have their imagination run wild with it, and give them these certain little skills, the basic skills. And I've always said the most creative people are students. We have this idea, and then you give it to students, and they're like, wow, absolutely amazing. And not just in the arts, it can be anything then. Kristen did the pixel drawing. You give that to a class of 24-year-olds, 24 8-year-olds. You can just imagine what they'll come back. And this is similar we're going to go through and look at some of the skills needed, where you can actually start to use Google Slides then to create an app prototype.
Brilliant, Tim. Thank you. I've just brought your screen in. It's showing right now. When you're ready to go.
Yep, perfect. So I'm going to do this almost in a workshop fashion, where we're just going to go and going to create something together. Like, this is recorded, so you can come back and check it out, etc. Also, I'll mention this at the end. You want to reach out for any questions as well, feel free to do. You can see my Twitter handles at the bottom there. So we're basically going to be looking at creating an app. So this is something we've always wanted to say, something I created earlier. So this is an app that you can share, okay? And these then students can test it. Obviously, there's no content here. And the content is really irrelevant for us. What we're wanting to do, and what I'm going to do for you this evening, Hong Kong time, is just show you the skills you'll need to complete this and to create this. Okay, so this is how it would actually look at the end. Again, I've done a mobile phone app. It can be a tablet app, whatever you're actually creating there as well. So how did we actually create it? Again, I want to show you this one in the background. So we've got slides created here, and Ken mentioned it earlier, and I believe Georgina did, the idea of hyperlinks in slides. It's such a powerful tool to have. So we're not just using it. I'm the generation death by PowerPoint, so we're not just using it as a presentation tool. So this is how the actual slide deck will look like this. Okay, so let's go and create a new one. Quick little tip, if you type in slides.new, it will automatically create a new Google Slides for you. Okay, it's doing that as well. I'm already logged into the actual Chrome browser, so it will automatically do that for me. Let me hide that and bring down the actual menu here. Okay, let's just call this demo. So there's a few things skills that we want our students to understand and to a certain extent master these skills, okay, so they can actually go away then, and we've talked about the creativity, we can leave them, just get creative. So you want them to be able to change slide dimension. We always think of that textbook, that's a Google slide size. By all means, it's not. Okay, insert text, you want them to edit text, insert shapes, edit shapes, link slides. That's the key for this to actually work, is the link slides. And we'll also look at how to publish this to the web, so it looks a little bit sleeker when you're actually sharing it. So we're sharing it so it does actually look like this. Okay, we want it to look like this rather than it to actually look, let me get my tabs right, look something like this. Okay, so first of all, the first thing I mentioned, am I the only one who deletes these boxes? I always delete the preset text boxes there. Right, so if we go to File and Page Setup, again, this is recorded, okay? So if I am going too fast, I do apologize. So File, Page Setup. This is the preset that we use. Normally these days, a lot of things is widescreen because of projectors and screens allow it, or the standard for those back in my generation day. We've got custom there. So custom is what we want to use. There's a rough, the rough idea is 1 to 2 basically. For, again, introduce this to students. They can depend on the device. I'm talking about mobile phone here now. So if we just do, for argument's sake, 4 to 8. Okay. And again, inches, centimeters doesn't actually matter too much here. Click apply, and straight away you can see that the slide has changed. Okay, the slide dimension. So even if I click present, you can see now that this is the size of our slide. There's so much you can do with just that, let alone app prototyping. The next thing then, we need to make it look a little bit more like a mobile phone. Okay, so I found an image here, free to use, by the way. Ensure that's something that you do share with your students, where you're getting images from. And then we can just paste it in there. If I should paste it in a minute, hopefully. We can do that for every slide. However, we can also go to View Master, and we can actually edit the master slide. So then we're not having to do that all the time, because this is our main background that we want for all our slides. So I've edited the master. So now when I go to insert a new slide, you'll notice two things: that it's default that the custom slide size has changed, and also then because it's a master, I've already created templates for student. Again, am I the only one who always goes to blank as well? Regardless of what I'm doing, I always go to the blank slide. So the first thing we want to do is we want to insert roughly the amount of slides that we think we're going to need. Okay, What I would have students do here is I'd have them actually plan this on a pen and paper as well, go old school, get them to actually map out this app. Okay, they can create even the slide shape, and they can almost create a booklet. So this is a big project. We've had students talk about passion project and things like that. We've had students in Genius Hour look at creating apps, and obviously through coding and things like that. But they would actually start from the basics, and they would do it on pen and paper. They then might bring it into a slides for their second prototype before they actually go. So have them plan out what they're actually creating there. Next thing we need to do, if we go back here, we need to ensure that they insert text, edit text, things like that. Okay, I apologize. This is things that the majority of us already know. Insert a text box. We can put text in there and write text. However, what we're going to do is we're going to insert buttons. Okay, we want them to look more and more like app buttons. Okay, just like you would on a phone. Insert, we're going to insert the shapes. Okay, so here there's a lot of shapes here that they could use. I always go for the second one there because it seems to have the rounded corners as well. Again, we can even change them a little bit, depends how we like. Change the colors. Again, there's so much potential in a project like this because they can look at colors, and the idea of, we've all seen that graphic where the red is something that they try and make addictive, like your McDonald's, your Coca-Colas, then you've got the green for your green peas again. So there's so much potential that this can turn into a full 6-10 week project. Okay, so they can look at colors, and also they can actually look at fonts. What do fonts tell you, and what is the general style of buttons and things like that on apps. So it's not just I'm going to create an app. So we're just going to change the outline, change the color there. I've gone for red. I'm not going to go for red. Go for blue. And again, we can change the thickness there. Okay, I've done all that really quick, but again, if you watch it back, you'll be able to see. So there is my button style there that I actually want. Okay, if I double click on that button, then I can write my app. Okay, whatever again they've planned what they're going to do. We're just going to call it, for argument's sake, my app. We're going to change the font style, change the font. I'm a big fan of Amatic when it comes to the younger students, and we'll just centralize it there, make it bold, maybe change the color so it does stand out. Wrong one. So then all of a sudden we've got what looks like it could potentially be a button or somewhere to go like that. What we always want, if again students will look at this and explain this, you go through apps, you go through websites, there's always a theme, fonts, sizes and shapes. So what I encourage students to do is to copy and paste the button a few times. Okay, so again, they can leave it on the side of the page if they're using it, they're not using it. So I want one on here. Then all they'll need to do is change wording. Okay, the style is exactly the same. Okay, I only want one button there, so I'm going to remove these, and I'm going to go to the next slide, and we're going to bring one of these into here, and let's just call this About Me. Again, this is something you could potentially do at the beginning of the year as well. And then what students can do is go back to something like this, and they're actually learning about each other. It could be almost like a Guess Who game, maybe. Thinking out loud now. And let's put that in there. And we'll just do one more so we can actually start looking at the crux of the actual app itself. And we'll just put in interest there, and we'll delete that one. Okay, so we've got the bulk of the app. Obviously there's content to go in there, but we won't look at that this evening. What I also want to show you, something else, is the Bitmoji. Bitmoji is one of them. You either love it or hate it. Okay, it's a bit like Google Sheets. I love Bitmoji, okay, especially for the younger students. It can turn a blank worksheet into something that just catches and engages students a little more. Add the extension to your Chrome browser, and then it's just so easy. Once you've got it all set up, they're automatic. Just drag and drop them in there. I sometimes just put these at the bottom of emails. Our teachers, again, they either love it or they hate it. And again, oops, I've clicked on Google Classroom. I clicked on the wrong one. Another good extension is the Google Classroom one. Let me wait for this to come up, and I will just do one more that I was wanting to show you. I'm just put home because we could possibly use this then as a home button for our app. Okay, so we put this home run. Like that. And then I'm going to quickly go and just drop that at the bottom of the page there. Okay. So on the home page, we could explain to students that on the home page, you actually want various buttons, don't we? So we want them things. So let's just have this. There we got the 2 buttons there. So again, this takes some time to fill up. Okay, I've flown through that now just with content that is really irrelevant to what we're doing. It's just I wanted to show you some things there. Okay, so the important thing that we want now is the links. Okay, so we've gone through slide dimensions, insert text, insert shapes, edit shapes, link slides. This is the does it work or does it not work moment. Okay, so if we just click on here, I want to highlight this. I'm clicking on the shape. Okay, I'm not clicking on the text because we don't want the text to be the link. We want the actual shape itself. So if I click on the shape, right click, we have link there. Okay, this is where we normally link it to websites, etc. This is what we want, slides in this presentation. Now I want this to go to slide 2. This is where it can get a little bit tricky. So again, you need to be able to map it out. Okay, so again, this is where it helps having that design. Slide 2, apply. Home page. Now I want this. So I'll do the about me. Exactly again, click on the shape, not the text. Right click, link. And my about me was slide 3. Click on slide 3, click apply. Okay, then it's all about testing. It's a prototype at the end of the day. So we test it. You can see all of a sudden there is a button there, my app, homepage, about me. Again, there's a button. Click there and it takes us here. What we haven't got is the return button or the home button. Okay, this is where we can use a Bitmoji like this. Can be it. Or again, we've had students use just a house image. Link. And why does that not come up as link? That should be linked. Okay, right, quick workaround. If that does happen, I've never seen that you insert an image there. What you can do is you can go in, insert a shape on top of that image. Okay, so this is going to be my button. At the moment, it's like that. If I then add link here, and I'm going to take it to slide 2. Okay, some images, for some reason, they won't let you link them. Okay, but on my example, it did. So that's the actual button. But what we can do is we can go to color, transparent, border, no border here, transparent. So all of a sudden, there is a shape there. Okay, we can click on the shape, but you can't see it. So when we come to present, there is a button there. Okay, that is if that happens. Okay, for some reason, I don't know why that's happened there. But what I've done is I've just layered it with a transparent shape and borderless transparent border shape. Okay, so that goes back there. Sorry, that threw me a bit there. So let me just go back and show you how it looks. Present, my app, about me, again, there's text here, and this is where that home button is now. For some reason, I had to put the shape in there. Whereas if you look at this example, my home stick there, let me link it for some reason. And I'm not too sure why that did. And the other one didn't. Okay. Then what we've got the basis here. This is, again, I've flown through this with you guys, but then what happens, you do this almost the same thing with students, and then students will go in and explore. They'll make mistakes. There's that trial and error. It's almost that problem solving, almost computational thinking in this as well, where the students can actually see, they can test it with their colleagues. This again is collaboration tool. You can share this if you are working from home and things, so more than one student can work on the thing. You can in groups, a certain slide for each student, and then what they do, they need to link it all up like that. Okay, for it to actually look like this, okay, and to share it like this, I've just published it to the web. Okay, so we go to File and Publish to the web. Every 3 seconds, what I do, I just stick this to every 30 seconds or a minute, so it doesn't automatically. If they're on this one slide for too long reading text or something, you don't want them to actually jump to the next slide by accident. So do it every minute. Click Publish. Okay, and it'll give you a link. This is the link you can share then. So if I now go and share this link, there again, this is how the students then can share this. They can put it wherever you use to share in your Google Classroom and things like that, and they can go. Google Classroom is a great tool because students on the stream can post this, and then students go and comment and offer feedback. They can say, I don't like that green, and you've got this green here. Maybe use one of the greens from the image. The buttons are too big. It's a bit too, I don't like the phrase, but childlike. It can maybe look a little bit more professional, maybe. The button, I don't like the button. I can't read it, and things like that. Okay, so that's the intro basically to app prototyping. Again, leave it with your students and you'll be amazed. We've done this with grade 3 students. As long as they've got these skills, and these are skills that they'll be learning at around a grade 2, grade 3 age anyway. The only extra bit then is your linking slides, your hyperlinks, and publish to web. I've also, just quickly to end, I've also used this then for PD level as well. So again, exactly the same kind of thing, but now this is obviously looks a bit more professional than my home roam buttons and stuff. Okay, so this is something that we actually share with teachers. The apps we use, the home button is a different home button. Digital citizenship for each grade. Okay, we can jump back into home. The coding tools, and these are links to resources and things like this. So this is something with the ISTE standards. I know a number of people are running ISTE. I know AppsEvents are doing it. Digital Pioneers is something that we're doing. All this kind of stuff then is in a one-stop shop that you can actually publish. Also, if you do publish it to web and you've got a great admin console manager or an IC team at school, get them to share it on your devices, put it on your tablets as what looks like an app, but it's not an app. It's just a direct link to, say, a website like this. So that is basically it. I would love to know what you guys have done with this or how you think you can actually use it. Please connect with me. You've got my Twitter handle there. I am open to direct messages if you got any questions, anything like that. And that is it. I've gone really quick through. I'm checking the time. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. That was absolutely fantastic. And I loved the thing you shared at the end with sharing out your resources to your staff. So that's all the staff access that sort of app prototype for all of your resources?
We have a different document that we'll share for different grades and things like that. But I also like sharing a whole school one, so we can actually see when you're in grade 3 what they're doing in grade 4, if that kind of idea, what apps they're using, that there is method to the madness. And I hate it when teachers come to us and say, can we have this app? And I'm like, oh, we're trying to hold it back for a couple of years. And they can actually see that there is, it's not just a mad decision that we said, no, you can't have a certain app. There is scaffolding going on there though.
Well, thank you very much, Tim. That was awesome. I'm going to go back and watch that again later because I'm really curious to how that worked. And I like the little battery percentage icon in the top of the app. Does that connect to the phone?
Yeah, depends. Depends if you got it plugged into the charger.
Nice response,
the
Tim.
details, it's all about details.
Nobody catch you out. Tim Evans, thank you very much. Your Twitter handle is at the bottom. Tim's based in Stanford again, in Hong Kong, of course. Always sharing, in fact, prolifically sharing on Twitter, if I may say.
That's where I talk about sharing. I go there as well from a lot of, I think I've seen an idea someone else was doing something similar to this as well in Keynote. But if you're not on Twitter, I'd highly recommend people get on Twitter, especially in the current climate where there is not going to be too much in-person PD. It's a great place to go and get ideas. And so that's exactly what you're doing, James. Thanks to AppsEvents for doing events like this for free. Do you know what I mean?
Really, it's thanks to people like yourself, Tim. So there's, a final big thanks to everybody, to you, Tim, Suan, who opened us up, Sethi, Georgina. Of course, we had Christina, Melanie, Ivy, Ken, and yourself, obviously not in that order. I think I mixed the order up, but all of these amazing presenters for sharing. We really do appreciate it, Tim. Thank you very much to you for closing us out. Let you go and get some rest this evening in Hong Kong.
Cheers, everybody. See you soon. Stay safe.
Good night, Tim. Thank you very much.
Cheers, James.
And just to close this out here, again, a final thank you to Acer for Education for sponsoring this event. Please do go and check out their devices. The Chromebooks are probably the best for education right now. The one shown here, I actually have this one. This is Spin 11. I've dropped this on concrete from my car from over a meter, and it survived without scratches. It's an amazing device. Do go and check it out. I say sponsoring the event, please go to this link. One lucky person is going to win a ticket to a boot camp. So if you know somebody, if you've got a colleague who wants to join an educator boot camp or join a summit later this year, please fill out this link and one lucky person will win that. gsummit.link/Acer. And the final closing message goes to everybody who's been watching this. We've been live for just over 3.5 hours. We've seen some amazing sharing. I want to say once more, thank you to everybody watching the stream. If you haven't done so yet, there is a button at the bottom of the stream that says subscribe. Subscribe to that. We've got tips and tricks videos launching every couple of weeks. We have podcasts launching, loads of great sharing on the channel. And a final closeout from another sponsor, AE Learning Lab, for ISTE certifications. Please check out AE Learning Lab if you're interested in the ISTE certifications. We have events coming up in the Middle East, Europe, and California. We're very, very excited to launch that with AE Learning Lab. Everybody, speakers, viewers, thank you so much. This is it from the summit. I hope you all enjoy the rest of the day. Check out the stream. Check out the YouTube video. We'll have all of the chapters on all of the resources linked. Thank you so much.